personally.
That is my understanding from his text.
Gotcha. And are we getting somebody from Catma or anything in terms of the bike share, or?
Yeah.
They're gonna.
I don't know if in person or online.
Well, we can get started. I'll call to order the final meeting.
Recording in progress.
I'll call to order the final meeting of this city council's Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee meeting at 5 o'clock. And I'd entertain a motion on the agenda.
And I would move to adopt the agenda as stated in our public documents.
And I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye.
One comment about that is that I know that there was an interest in under director's report covering water main break protocols.
Yes.
And that staff is prepared to talk about that under director's report.
Excellent.
That's
That's the intention.
Yes.
and having just reviewed it, I'm not seeing anything in my mind that would make that would make the report a executive, like a privileged document, confidential.
There were some items in that document that the attorneys this morning at the HRC, the Human Resources Committee, said that we can talk about the document in open session, but not distributing the document publicly. And we can follow up with the attorneys more directly if you want to, but.
Yes, I would like in terms of that, I would like the document to be made public. And if there are things that are subject to the privilege, then we should get some clarity on that, including the pages and the rationale under which under the statute.
Right.
So we will take that up during the director's report. Next, entertain a motion on adoption of minutes from this meeting. Actually, two sets of minutes from our 227 regular meeting and our 313 special.
So I would move the adoption of both of those together as written.
And I would second that. All those in favor? Aye. And so that passes. And next, we have public forum. Is there anybody in the room here to speak at public forum?
Well, I had just a few questions more about the bird bite specifically.
We don't do questions usually during public forum. It's an opportunity for the public to tell us what they're thinking, usually either on agenda items that we're deliberating on, anything else that they might. If you'd like, when we get to that item on the agenda,
Sure.
you could maybe ask those questions and forum them, and we could probably get answers from some of the people that are speaking to that.
Sounds good.
I'm seeing nobody else in the room. Do we have anybody online, maybe?
Anyone online?
We have Mike Porter. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for providing the airport information. I think based on the information, I would like to further request that the net zero energy roadmap reflect that both our electrical output and our airport are much higher creators of greenhouse gas emissions than what is actually stated, which is, I think, thermal and transportation, ground transportation. So maybe we can update our climate action plan to reflect the actual largest polluters of greenhouse gases in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let's get next. Is anybody else online wanting to speak at public forum? Ashley? Go ahead. No? Ashley, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand, please. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, I'm actually raising my hand to say, no, I don't want to
Oh,
speak.
okay.
Thank you for thinking of me. And yeah, and I guess just to echo that I'm pleased to see this report and just kind of the general notion, and I know that this isn't exactly the topic of this meeting, but and I haven't had a chance to look at the report yet. It just came out. I see a lot of use of the word sustainability, and that's great, and I appreciate a lot of the work that the airport has done around sustainability. It's just, for me, the larger issue comes down to an ever expanding airport is never going to be sustainable. That's not what we need to be doing. Flying is just about the worst thing that we can be doing for the climate. So I'd like to just leave you with that thought, and then certainly echo what Pike said about actually the need to moving forward count emissions from the airport and from McNeil fully and accurately and honestly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there anybody else, Maddie, wishes to speak? If you wish to speak and you're online watching, raise your hand, please, and we'll recognize you.
She's that director.
Right. Right. Is she part of it? She's part of it. Nobody else? Okay, well then we'll go ahead and close public forum and move on to our deliberative agenda. First on our deliberative agenda, we have the airport and VTANG here today, following up from a council resolution that we passed last year. Looks like July 24th, 2023. And we had asked that the Air Guard come back and tell us about initiatives and work they've done out there at the base to reduce emissions. So they're here today, and we also have Colonel Finnegan and his some people you introduced.
So we've got Shannon Kelly, he's our environmental manager, and I've got Major Matt Lee, who's our civil engineer, who's responsible for the construction of the green initiatives that we do.
Okay, and we also have Director Longo here to tell us the progress they're making with the airport as well. And
So with me today, we have Marie Friedman online. She's our Director of Finance. We have Larry Lackey, our Director of Planning, Engineering, and Sustainability, and Hannah Dusapor on our executive assistant.
excellent. So I'll hand it over to you for presentation, and do you want to do that?
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to spend maybe 15 minutes kind of going through the presentation and the data associated with it, and then hand it over to Colonel Finnegan for updates from the Vermont Air National Guard. And I believe Maddie's going to put it up online or on the TV for you.
Yes.
It is on the website as well as the report and this presentation on the VTV.aero website. Just as we get going, just a little bit of highlights on where we were, what we were doing. I think it was about a year ago, 8 months ago, somewhere in that time range, here at the TOO committee, presenting with our sustainability consultant, and then where our updated information is, and of course where we're going with some of our projects. Back in 2016 through 19, we updated our airport master plan and came out with what we call a Sustainability Takes Flight brochure. This brochure again is online. This is not what we presented last time. This is a previous brochure, but essentially it kind of gave us that runway to look at the future of the airport and our action items associated with all of those sustainability missions. And if you go to the second page, and this is kind of the list, the outline of what that looks like. I'm not going to go into the details of this particular plan, because as we produced our airport master plan, which I assure you is a much larger document than this one. We realized that we can do better on various items, both from a project and a planning perspective, as well as a constructability and financial sustainability perspective. Part of this plan and part of the presentation that we supported with to you last time was this next slide, which talks about our partnership with the Federal Aviation Administration, the Department of Transportation, and some of the data collected. Last time we did have a 2020 update. The Environmental Protection Agency just released this particular document earlier this year. In fact, about a week ago, they just closed public comment on the US greenhouse gas emissions and sinks document, which goes through data collected through 2022. And this information is just a couple of snapshots on the transportation sector, and specifically the aircraft of that transportation sector.
So just to slow down a little bit, this is from the latest publication by Transportation US.
By the EPA.
By the EPA.
Correct.
And this is a snapshot of that, or at least a part of that, and there's a link in here so that anybody who would like to delve into the numbers can get them there.
Yeah, we can put the link on here. This is at epa.gov, and then on the next slide, it's going to have additional links to the FAA documentation, which is all associated with this.
So yeah, I see on the bottom one of the charts.
You got it.
So that's where the climate action plan, that's where this comes from, and where other information can be received.
That's correct. This is, I would definitely classify this document as kind of the master document associated with greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. This is specifically talking about a small chapter. I think this is a 600-page document talking about the chapter of transportation, which is 29% of US greenhouse gas emissions. Of that 29% of the transportation sector, aircrafts are 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions. Not 8% of the total US emissions, but 8% of the transportation sector. What's really interesting, again, this is updated information. The top right and the bottom left, the raw data numbers on the bottom left and the pie charts in the top right are from the 2021 data. But the bottom right graphic is from this particular document, which is a 2022 updated information. The point being, since 1990, the US aircraft aviation emissions has decreased by almost 18%. That means we're doing okay, but there's a lot of work to do, and we'll talk about that, and specifically with Patrick Lady Burlington International Report is doing to contribute to those numbers.
So for example, and this is testing my old eyes, on the left-hand chart, 2021 aircraft, military aircraft, I see a percentage decrease. Am I accurate, of 65%?
That's correct.
From 1990 to 2021.
Correct. That's correct.
Good deal.
And general aviation, commercial aviation, general aviation is a 45% decrease, again, comparing 1990 to 2021. There is an increase in commercial aviation from 1990 to 2021. 2022 was very similar data, and that's why I included it on this. On the next page, it really dives into specifically the Federal Aviation Administration documentation, their latest climate action plan, specifically the aviation climate action plan is from 2021. The importance of this slide, especially since we were last in front of you talking about these numbers, is really related to sustainable aviation fuel and the climate goals of the Federal Aviation Administration introducing SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, into the United States sectors. 2021, late 21, 22 is when we were last with 2, and you can see that bar graph up there really starts telling the story of how much is being contributed financially to the production of sustainable aviation fuels. And right now that commodity is extremely hard to get in the aviation sector, especially in the Northeast, more generally on the East Coast. However, that's more in line with our partnerships with Heritage Aviation, which is our fixed base operator on the airfield, supplying all of the fuel except to the Vermont Air National Guard, all of the fuel at the airport. They have contracts with their fuel carriers to start carrying sustainable aviation fuel, which is a really easy mixture of fuels that be introduced into especially small hub airports without actually making the fuel on an airfield. But from this graph, this is the same graph that I showed you before, again from this 2021 Department of Transportation Aviation Climate Plan, really showing at the very top of this line chart going from left to right, if nothing was done with the aviation sector, that red line that kind of peaks towards 2025, of course, the global and certainly the United States greenhouse gas emissions would increase. However, with fleet renewal, with new aircraft technology, both on engines and aircraft performance, operationally, and with the introduction of sustainable aviation fuel, you can start seeing that the US, specifically the FAA's goals of hitting much lower, all the way down to 100% emission reduction by 2050 is starting to look more and more favorable, again, with the introduction of sustainable aviation fuel.
Nick, I'm sorry, but could you later, obviously, amend the slide before, I think, to have a link or at least a reference to where we can get this document. I was doing, the EPA one, so we've got the FAA one. That would be very helpful.
We will definitely do that, and we'll get that over to Maddie.
Thank you.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit more about Lady BTV's progress and some of our updates specifically to the sustainability management plan, which Larry's going to take it.
All right, I think, as we reported before, we were looking at 2019. The reason for that, for our baseline emissions, the reason for that was it was pre-pandemic, and it was one of the best years the airport had in a long time, over a decade, before 2007, 2008, when the whole crash happened. So that's why we selected that. The airport team spent hours over last year gathering all kinds of thousands of hours, gathering all the information we needed to get this report done. And we have now completed the baseline report that's on our website. So that is complete. So
2019
baseline, because that made the most sense. So we have a place to work and do better from. So
we definitely couldn't choose 21 through really now, because we're not even past our 2019. Yeah.
So in this report, we looked at scope 1, scope 2, and you'll see later scope 3 emissions. The scope 1 is direct emissions from sources that are owned and controlled by BTV, such as fuel use, power, airport vehicles, and facilities. And scope 2, indirect emissions associated with purchased electricity, heating, cooling, and powering facilities. So those, we're focusing on those moving forward also. Can we get the next slide, please? So this is just a list of the scope 1, the scope 2, and then obviously the scope 3, which is the aircraft. So you can see what the sources are and what we studied and what scope they fall under here.
And just as a reminder to listeners and to the board, like Larry said, scope 1 and scope 2 are the focus and the primary reason to get our airport carbon accreditation approved by the Airport Council International. However, at the request of you all and others, we did study scope 3 aircraft emissions, not just to or from runway to 3,000 feet, but from 3,000 feet all the way to 3,000 feet to the destination airport. So we studied that entire flight.
Great, and the military would be a separate document. It's not gonna
So
be.
we have the information.
It is included in the inventory.
It was included, it's gonna be included in this greenhouse, yes, in
You'll
this
see it.
document.
Yeah.
Okay, but the carbon accreditation program does not take military aircraft, so we aren't sending them.
Identifying different planes just so that they're there, but then you're not mixing them. Yeah, that's got it.
So the next step with that baseline is the carbon accreditation certification, which we're hiring a consultant, which will go out and verify our report and certify it to the airport carbon accreditation committee. And then we can take steps. There's 7 steps. We go for step 1, obviously first, get accredited for that, and go from step 1 is just mapping, which this will do, like we've done. And step 2 is reduction. The remainder of what we need to do with respect to what we know now with the study we did is to get this verification done, which I just talked about. Develop a sustainable policy statement, goals and performance targets. Identify and evaluate candidate sustainability strategies. Develop, implement phasing and early action items. Prepare sustainability management plan and develop a process for reporting progress. So those are our next steps after the accreditation. And those are all in our next scope in next probably years or 6 months to years worth of work. So.
Just as a side note, of the hundreds of airports in the United States, there are currently only 44 airports in the country that have any accreditation. We would be the 45th airport to get our accreditation in any one of these categories. We would be the 2nd airport in New England to accomplish this. Boston Logan does have their level 1 mapping accreditation. We would be the 2nd one if we get this accreditation before other airports. And then we would be the 20th in the United States in the mapping category in the entire country. We're not stopping there. Level 1 is just the mapping, it's just the inventory. The next step is truly level 2 reduction and getting plans in place, action plans in place to actively reduce our carbon emissions. Sure. So this is more into the numbers of the actual report. Again, 2019 greenhouse gas emissions inventory. The pie chart kind of irrelevant because it's such a significant number on the yellow area there. From the 2019 numbers, it's estimated to be just shy of 119,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent produced at the airport. 1.1% of that is scope 1 and scope 2, the things that we can control, the buildings and such. 99%, everything else is scope 3, which is essentially that aircraft operation to the destination airport.
That is really important. I want to thank you for that because at the end of the day, when we brag about how good we are and how we're doing all this stuff, and we should brag. No, 98.88% is not part of that, those bragging rights unless we have brought them in there. So I really appreciate this because I'm not into hubris, particularly. I'm not into hubris. I need to be really realistic. So thank you very much.
And that's why we're so excited about the sustainable aviation fuel. We have to bring this to BTV. Otherwise, that 99% doesn't change.
And it goes on the FAA for 2030 and 2050.
This is just a quick breakdown of all of the CO2 equivalent. And as you can see, the top 3 lines there, aircraft cruise from 3,000 to 3,000 at the destination, that's called cruise. aircraft landing and takeoff operation, which is the second line, and aircraft auxiliary power unit, which is the third line. All really create that significant 99% from the prior page.
What is the auxiliary power? So how many
Great
sitting
question.
on the runway and you're not freezing?
No, so cruise and landing and takeoff, you're obviously using the engines that you as a passenger see, right, the big engines. There's essentially a third engine that's inside the aircraft, a 2-engine aircraft. That is that auxiliary power unit, a generator, if you will, in the aircraft that powers the equipment needed pretty much to start. These guys know much more about it. But
It's a start.
it's a start. But what's really nice about it is, from our perspective, is that's one of the things that we may be able to control. Meaning when aircraft come to our gate, a lot of times they do run that APU, they're running that engine, if you will. We have now new signage at the airport. When you pull into our gate, we literally have a sign that's directly in front of the pilot's eyes that say, do not run your APU if you can, and plug into our electric units from our jet bridges, which now all of our jet bridges are capable of doing that through Burlington Electric Department of Electricity.
No idea.
No,
No idea.
Yeah, okay, no, I don't.
No idea.
Now, full caveat, that's not our decision, that's gonna be the pilot's decision and the company's decision on how they do that. So that was pretty much our scope 3 qualifications. Two slides, right? Because again, it's mostly aircraft operations. Scope 1 and 2, when we start looking at that 1.1%, now there's many different categories, and each one of those categories are something that we want to really dive in and start to control. We purposely put a couple of pictures of our amazing snow crew and snow operations at the airport. And actually one of our amazing maintenance technicians just walked in the door. And those 3 pictures really define the majority of that top bullet point, which is 45,000 gallons of diesel fuel. There is no equipment out there on the market, electric equipment out there on the market that can satisfy our FAA regulations of removing snow. So that's something we really need to focus on with the industry as time goes on. However, some of the smaller vehicles we can. Same with our emergency power generators, our natural gas, our electricity in the building, generally building emissions. Those are things that we really can dive into right now and try to reduce those numbers almost immediately. One of the things that we are going to be doing, actually we have done, and thank you to the council because you voted on doing this, it was probably 4 months ago or so, is electrification of our smaller vehicle fleet. There's 3 vehicles on that bottom picture. One to the left is for our generally our facilities maintenance division, which Damien is part of. And that's our very first electric truck that we've ever purchased at the airport. The middle vehicle there is a Mach-E, which is now used for any time any city employee leaves the airport for any reason, they're using that electric vehicle, meaning a new policy is set that you're not leaving the airport needing fuel. And I'm really excited about that last vehicle, which is that yellow vehicle. That's our very first operations electric vehicle. That's the, as far as I know, the only vehicle in New England that is electric, and it's being used for multiple daily inspections of our runway and taxiway systems. So this vehicle, all of these vehicles are very much operational vehicles, and we are no longer needing fuel out on those various scopes of work. Another really important item there is that top left circle, which doesn't look exciting maybe right off the bat, but it's super exciting to me. You have 2 tugs right there. Tugs are the blood push back and pull in the aircraft. if needed. And then beyond that are what you would see more and more, which is chargers for vehicles. Those tugs, heavy duty, they need a lot of power to push those aircraft. Specifically, United Airlines has now invested in VTB with our partnership to install those electric charging stations to bring in new electric ground support equipment at VTB, something that's come out of our conversations of. And then I'll quickly run through the last couple of slides. Thank you very much for your vote last night. We're super excited to get started on our North Terminal project, which is aptly named Project Next. Got to speak about it a little bit last night. Essentially, it's a 25,000 square foot replacement of our north building, 4 new gates, 4 new jet bridges, more electrification capability to the aircraft themselves. But really the whole point of this particular design was a heavy focus on sustainability and to make sure that we are able to afford that type of infrastructure because it is expensive. It is different than a normal build out of a terminal building. The 3 major things that we're installing as part of this new infrastructure are geothermal. We talked a bunch about the natural gas that we use in our terminal building. This will help eliminate, especially in this part of the building, natural gas requirements for heating and cooling this particular building. So we are installing geothermal directly underneath the construction of this building. We're also employing a brand new construction method for us, which is a mass timber framing and many wood products associated with this terminal building, all the way from the ground level to the 3rd floor of this particular building. This view right here is the 3rd floor. It's the nostalgic observation tower that's coming back to ETV. This would be pre-security, so you can access this space
I remember bringing
and or rent.
4-year-old, so long time.
Well,
A long time.
and we get a lot of comments on that. It's a popular space to be, that observation tower, and we really want to bring that back in. Have events out there as well.
This project, the replacement project, it's gonna be passenger safety and aircraft safety too. Is the driver of this, because space available and also the location of the current concourse that causes problems. That's
But on this particular thing, sure. So on the geothermal, one of the things that, we've been pushing, I've been pushing for geothermal a lot around the place. So this raises to my brain the question of why it works here, so that we can learn lessons. And when I say we, maybe it's just me, as to where it's appropriate to be pushing it, why does it, where it's not, what are the technical things that, and so using this good stuff, because I really believe that geothermal is essential to do. And including, your thermal energy networks where you're capturing heat as well. So really having us understand for use in other public policy decisions, why it works here, what the, have you looked at the thermal energy networks as a second step, if you haven't done those, where you're capturing waste heat and feeding that back in. So there's all this thing. So that's one thing, I guess, it's really sort of a future looking sort of request, because in a way that you're doing a pilot project for the greater area, and we should benefit from that. And where are you getting the mass timber framing from?
Yeah, good question. It has to be from the United States. So it can be from Canada because this is a federally funded project. Most likely it'll be from Alaska or somewhere in that region. Which was one of our initial concerns when we were talking about mass timber is, are we truly saving embodied carbon emissions from a shrugging it across the country? And the answer is yes. We did a full study to verify that we're going to be saving carbon somewhere in the 10 times fold instead of buying steel.
Are there people, I'm sorry.
We did do an analysis on the geothermal too, where, there's a lot more cost up front, but
It would be really helpful for,
we've done all that.
it would be really helpful for us to understand.
We have all this stuff.
And have you talked to folks in the Northeast, or say New England? Or, in terms of the embodied carbon for the mass timber to see what's out there? I mean, I think that we're in the very early stages of supporting this industry. That's part of the question that we had around McNeil. This is really important for foresters, it's really important for loggers, important for truckers, important for property owners. Okay, got that. What are their alternatives to just burning stuff and, letting the CO2 go up? And so it's really a question of who you've made contact with, and are we in this process starting to help with the development of an industry that could be a Vermont industry, could be a Maine industry. I like Maine.
Yeah.
So
Maine was a hot topic during this design project. In fact, Larry and I drove to Maine, specifically Portland Jetport, because they also installed a mass timber facility in their terminal building. And we were able to get not just a tour of their mass timber facility, but also their geothermal field as well. We really want to use Maine product if we can. For this size of building, I don't think we're going to sustainably be able to do that, but potentially a piece of the puzzle. If you've been in our terminal building, especially on the south side, our new space, all of the ceiling that you see there, that's all Vermont wood product, which is really amazing. That continues throughout the terminal of this building. So we'll use various forms of wood product in New England and say further west.
I think it's just something that we have to keep doing. Be out of our silos.
That's right. And from a sustainable funding and a sustainability greenhouse gas emissions perspective, the cost of mass timber is very similar to the cost of steel structure. So we're, not the same, but very similar. So we're able to really see some of those benefits, both of those. The last couple of slides I have for you are really just some of the details, just to get a kind of a bird's eye view of the new terminal building. Didn't have too much time last night, but it's kind of a bird's eye view of where this new building is going to be placed. And if you scroll two more, I think, Mary, this is the new interior of the building. You kind of get the full effect of what we're doing. With all of that ceiling is all mass timber. There's no steel beams. It's all huge beams made out of wood. We are creatively looking even at these light structures. Once you have mass timber, of course, you don't have drop ceilings or any type of ceiling. So our security cameras, our Wi-Fi systems, our lighting systems, we needed a creative way to implement those. Those lights are actually hollowed out so that we can install all of our accessories to the building without sacrificing any of the wood product that's visually appealing as well. And then it's the simplicity of what we're doing. Polished concrete where we can, instead of carpet, which we constantly have to rip up and dispose of. Simplicity of the furniture, new spaces for passengers, and this one in particular to the left there is a new kids zone for the area, as well as a shielding on the windows to reduce some of the light coming in. There's also shielding on the exterior of the building, which I believe is the next slide or the slide after. Then one, you can see those slatted wood pieces on the side of the building to create shadows within the building. to reduce the heat going into the building when we don't want heat in the building. And reusing as much as we possibly can of the existing structure. Everything that you see to the right, pretty much above that car that's moving, that electric car that's moving, and that's an electric is all existing today. So we're literally trying to form around what we have today to create what Larry defined as a safer and a more appropriately sized airport for the size of aircraft that are now coming into the airport. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
I had just one question, and I wanna get on to,
And I was gonna ask one other question if it's not yours.
so my question is, it seems like with like 99% of the emissions coming from aircraft, this is all great. But one of the things that caught my eye was the slide from the EPA 2021 Aviation Climate Action Plan, where they talk about sustainable aviation fuel. You see, that's where the biggest bang for the buck is. And I guess I'm wondering why sustainable aviation fuel, hopefully this isn't a dumb question, but why is it lower emissions? Why is it lower emissions by using sustainable aviation?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of reasons why, and Larry can fill in some of the blanks if I miss any. It's a new commodity, right? It's the way that this fuel is being manufactured and produced and of course sent to the various airports using residual farming products, residual graining products to actually create this fuel, which then can be mixed with current inventories of fuel, which is creating another level of easier access, if you will. If you asked me how we were going to get sustainable aviation fuel, knowing that this new product couldn't be mixed with current inventory, it would be incredibly costly and challenging for small hub airports like ourselves to just get the products into an airport our size. But I really think, I'm not an expert on sustainable aviation fuel. I really think it's from the very get-go of creating the commodity all the way to the distribution.
Shannon wants to talk about this too.
I'm not a deep expert on it, it just has a lower, amount of carbon in it. I know the Navy had attempted some of this about 14 or 15 years ago with rapeseed oil, which is basically canola. So it's just it just has a lower amount of carbon in it, and so those emissions factors go down considerably.
It seems like if you look at all the things we can do, that's the thing that drives the curve.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
That's my question.
and the 50% and 100% uptakes you've got on that. So one is dark green, the other is light green. Could you just explain those two? It looks like maybe what you're saying is that some of it you can only do 50%. If you did 100%, then you'd get
Massive reductions.
Yeah.
Again, I think that has to do with the deployment and how it's mixed with the current inventory of the, again, this is a US graph, whole country graph, versus 100% sustainable aviation. A very, very good resource for aviation fuel is that bottom left link there, the FAA.gov sustainability. That's where these graphs came from, and it starts defining the process of how SAF is made, how it's deployed, where it's being produced right now, which right now is not on the East Coast, which is why it's extremely hard to get. It's mostly on the West Coast. It's got a lot of really great links associated with that.
interesting. I am curious, my question relates to the expansion of the in the terminal. So new North Terminal that I just voted for last night. But I did raise last night, the question of aviation emissions. And so the question of the increase in the number and the size of airplanes that are either a result of this or that's going to be accommodated. And just talk to us about numbers. Give us Give us some numbers on that.
Yeah, so like Larry was saying, this truly is a replacement of what we have today. If you've been on American Airlines or United Airlines, that section of today's airport, it's a very small hallway essentially to get to those particular gates. That was designed for aircraft that were between 30 and 50 seats with 4 gates down that way. So if you had 4 times 50 seats, you have 200 essentially people that potentially could be down there. Some of our aircraft that are now using, in fact, most of our aircraft that are now using those gates are between 130 and 100 seats per aircraft times 4. So that hallway no longer works, not to mention the proximity of the last gate to our active taxiway. Larger aircraft, longer aircraft, it extends very, very close, if not into an active taxiway.
And this is a
That's
problem.
one plane flying versus 2 to 3.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And so is this meaning that, say, United is decreasing the number of flights, but increasing the size of their planes? Or are we, booming, and so they're going, by God, we'll just triple up the, the
Same
number.
quantity with larger aircraft.
Yeah.
Both. Do we have a small decrease in total number of commercial operations? Yeah, a small decrease in commercial operations because they're being replaced with 3 regional 50-seaters with 1 to 2 larger aircraft. If you did this on a per capita basis, if you will, so that 200-seat aircraft, that would take 4 flights on a 50-seater, of course. And the demand out of BTV is there for those 4 flights. Those 4 flights are being reduced to a 2 to 3 quantity of flights on a much larger aircraft, usually Boeing 737 or an equivalent size. So we can't get the same number of passengers on a regional carrier on the same number of operations anymore. That's a reduction in operations because of those larger aircraft. And this building accommodates everything from that taxiway to the safety, to the jet bridge, to the number of seats inside the terminal to accommodate those number of passengers in a small period of time.
It can also remind us where we bring people in from. The growth is not significant, right? So we show increases in our master plan, but they're not very much.
Okay, yeah, this would be an area of future interest that I have, just to get to understand the economics as they relate to the climate issues is what's driving.
Yeah.
What's driving it. So
I can also add to that too, that those larger aircraft are flown by the airline that's actually painted on the side of the plane. Typically a small regional carrier will not be flown by that main brand. It will be a subsidiary company. Those mainline aircraft, the one that's painted on the plane, those are newer aircraft, newer engines, newer technology that all contribute to greater, or I should say less carbon emissions.
Boeing is a whole nother question, but leave that one out.
Well, Boeing is a great company.
That was just some snark on my part. You're in the news, I think they replaced their CEO or something like that. So like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist that. But
Well, thank you for that update. We'll look forward to future. We also have the guard here, so we'd love to hear what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate thanks, Nick. Now even more excited about the report. Those slides before. I want to thank you as well for inviting us to come speak. To my knowledge, this is the first time that we've actually sat down kind of in a collaborative forum with the two to be able to kind of look at common goals. Say we certainly have those. Sometimes they may not always be the same priorities, but we certainly have the same common goals. So 2 things I did want to cover. I'd like to talk about the MOU versus the resolution. The resolution is kind of the thing that brought us here to kind of talk to specifically.
And then to give you some updates on some of the things we have done, things we are doing, and what we're going to be doing for carbon emissions going forward. I say, and I thank Nick for kind of highlighting some of the places that we say, well, these are the things that are in our control, and these are the things that are not in our control. And when we first got the resolution, to be honest, I didn't see it until it passed, so I didn't know what it entailed until it had already gone through. And it really highlighted for me the need, and this is what led to our work with the mayor to kind of refine in the MOU what we can and what we can't do. So with our federal mission, there are things that are in our control, particularly those is how we build on the airport. And then there are things that are not in our control. And I'll talk to some of those. When I look at the resolution specifically, it looks, I break it out into kind of different asks, if you will. It's asking the Air Force and a number of parties to collaborate. But I think if we start from a common understanding of what is possible and what is not possible, I think we can focus on areas that we can actually make improvement on. So the first one talks to specific plan to adopt simulation and augmented reality systems. I would say for this, there may be an inference in here that it's the goal there is to eliminate flying. I can tell you that we have led the way in simulation for about 10 years. So prior to moving into the F-35, we had a regional simulator that brought in people from around the United States to train simulators that we had here. Now with the F-35, we've replaced that. It's extremely advanced technology. There's 4 cockpits, they're about $18 million a piece. But that in that simulation is moving forward. But the simulation isn't, from the Air Force's perspective, it's more designed around making sure that our pilots get the appropriate training in the tactical environment, which actually does mean that we would potentially fly less. But there is a floor. I think back on how this has affected us over probably the last decade. We've essentially flown the same. I mean, I was curious to see the 1990 revolution. This looked quite big to me, but at least in the last 30 years, we've flown essentially the same amount. And I would argue without the simulation, we would have been flying. And that's just based on the complexity of the systems that we're conditions that we are estimating.
I'm sorry, can I ask a clarification?
Sure.
So the F-35 simulators, 18 million a pop, 4 of them, are they in place now, or you're getting them? So they're
Oh no, they've been
in place and they're being used and okay.
Yeah, we had those before there.
Okay, yeah.
So that was part of our. The other piece I'd ask is the reason there's a floor. I mean, there's a safety element that I can tell you. There is no amount of simulation that's going to replace, call it the fear factor, if you will, or the ability to actually do it. And then there's an entire organizational element that means airplanes need to fly. So when the government needs the airplane to go somewhere, if it was just, if they just sit there, our maintainers don't get training, our pilots do. Simulators right now with current technology are not exactly. There's so many things that cannot be simulated flying these kind of flights. So there is a floor. But we are certainly open to it. We have entire teams of people that are pushing forward on simulation to go. When that technology needs to become available, we want to be on the leading for a number of reasons. But I would say that only to say the Air Force tells us how much we have to fly. So the amount of flying that we're going to do is going to be driven by a number of factors, which I can talk to you. But it is certainly augmented by simulation. It certainly is something that we're continuing to push forward. And then the second piece of this was to reduce or eliminate aviation and predominant greenhouse gas emissions. I separate those two for reasons like we just talked about. The mission requires us to fly, it requires us to fly a certain our current flying rates, we're flying about 1,000 sorties less a year than the EIS allows. So we are already doing some very good work, limiting the number of sorties and making sure that we maximize the training at flying.
How much of this, you're making this public presentation, so this, thank you for that. I'm sensitive to, national security and limitations in terms of publication, so, but, how much of this is, can be put into a document and be, made publicly available, so that we can see, for example, if we talk about reductions in sorties, then, how many, like over, an X number of years and how many there have been. And so I'm just trying to get a greater sense, like, the trust but verify approach to,
What's that?
I was gonna talk about the annual.
Yeah.
So we're working with Colonel Finnegan and we're updating our noise exposure map this year. Part of that update is to take real radar data associated with the calendar year's worth of operations across the board, small planes all the way to the F-35. So we're extensively working with the to get actual quantities of operations and that potential reduction. I haven't seen the data yet, but those numbers are going to be within that.
so that'll be in that documentation, and then they would be able to be compared to a prior one.
Both the EIS and the prior.
And then the next iteration of such a study is in how many years?
So we do two maps. We do a current condition and then we do a future forecast. That will come out this year.
Yep.
And it'll talk about the quantity of operations, and then we if we want to continue our noise mitigation program, every 5 years we're required to do that, or a major change in operation.
Can't conceive the next 5 years of there being an elimination of the noise mitigation unless there is a major change that's causing the noise. Just okay, so 5 years ago. Right, 5 years, and there was one that was 5 years ago.
It was actually less than 5 years ago because of the transition from F-16 to F-35.
Thank you.
And we provide with all of the data for that, roughly speaking, and from there we fly about 2,000 sorties a year. When you turn that into operations, which is what they specifically care about, take off event, which is the one I think you're talking about, and then there's a landing event, which is less, but that would mean about 4,000 operations at the airport, roughly. Now, a good chunk of those we don't do here, so whenever we deploy it, taking those operations elsewhere, but let's say it was 4,000, I'm pretty sure the EIS number is 52, 58, somewhere in that window, so it was already significant limitation.
So that's the maximum number of operations that you can have.
Correct. But per the EIS, if something were to drive us outside of that, it wouldn't limit us from doing it, it would just require a supplement EIS.
Makes that decision the Air Force?
The Air Force would, yes. Yeah, they would be the ones, but right now we're so far away from doing it. I think all of those things were taken into consideration when we did the first one. The other thing with the aviation gases, we also started researching sustainable fuel. But that fell into the category of what we're allowed to do and what we're not. Obviously, the engine is highly technical, and the Air Force itself has been looking at sustainable fuel, not per platform, but as an entirety. So in other words, how do we support this operation for not just the F-35, but the multitudes of aircraft that the Air Force flies? For our particular aircraft, it hasn't been certified. It's kind of at a spot now where whatever technical reason it doesn't meet the needs of our particular. But I do know that we've asked that question and tried to pull that forward and made it known that
when the technology does get to that point, we want to be able to be getting it. So that falls into the realm of, this is what we're trying to do, but again, in the realm of possible. So we're working towards that. Greenhouse gas emissions from the ground and how we're building, I think is the single biggest thing that we can affect. And to be honest, I mean, these guys won't say it, but both of them are nationally recognized for their work in environmental management and in civil engineering in their professions. But the facilities on the Air National Guard base, we've been working towards geothermal and net zero construction for nearly 50 years. We were the first ones to put a geothermal building on the airport. And now I think if we were to add up that one building with the numbers we talked about, by going geothermal on just one of those buildings that we've done, saves 26.8 metric tons per year, which is the equivalent of 6 vehicles driving. And that's a single building, but right now, since we've done that, how many years ago was the first building done? 2011. 2011, and now we have 25% of the buildings based on geothermal. 70% of the base is converted to LED lighting. We have another 25% of that scheduled. So how much we can convert is kind of a function of how much we allocate to us for a given period of time.
Have you guys looked at thermal energy networks?
You mean
Which, so thermal energy networks is a combination of geothermal, but it also is the capture of waste heat off of your whatever kind of equipment that you've got. If you had refrigerators or you had assorted other equipment that's generating heat and being able to capture that, and they're networks that it basically is a network that's linked in.
So we use energy recovery wheels and all that with our HVAC. We have not looked at trying to capture refrigerators and other things that take in heat. One thing we've done with some of the buildings that have a lot of COM is the COM equipment generates a lot of heat. So we use that to try to recycle that heat as much as possible. But no, we have not looked at refrigerators and computers and some of those other things.
If you did and you analyze that and had some sense of viability and issues, I think that there are folks who are very interested in promoting those networks and seeing how they use, how they work. And so, seeing you as pilot project or sorts, would be, I think, greatly appreciated in terms of the sharing of that information. And if you did it and you said, hey, this actually works, what an odd thing that guy suggested something that actually worked. Being able to share that, would be very appreciated by me, and I think would be very helpful to lots of folks out there.
To your question earlier about geothermal too and how it works, because of the Guards work with geothermal, because of Beta Technologies work with geothermal, we have a really great understanding in our small geographic area that it's going to work for our building as well. So we weren't the first.
Yeah, this is essential. We could have a huge development here. What are the conditions that you've got that are not applicable and not going to work because it's over here, right? Sharing that information helps us if we're going to be trying to be pushing for certain things, but it's a stupid thing to do, so don't go there. But maybe it's not a stupid thing. Maybe it's just people are not really looking at it or not willing to invest in it because, as you were talking about in terms of the upfront cost, needing to have a different time frame in which we're looking at stuff, knowing how hard it is to pony up the money. Not do that, so appreciate that.
Operating within the budget is certainly the confine aspect of it.
It's
Whether it's doable, but we can certainly.
and sharing, where those breakpoints are, so that start to make arguments, cases in terms of looking at long-term sustainability and why it's not all that smart to be penny wise.
I just wanted to recognize that your ability to do a lot of this work going forward was predicated on us extending your lease, so the Air Force would give you the grants that you would need to do that.
Perfect segue, because that was exactly the next thing I was gonna say. Other than the fact that our current solar farm, the biggest in the Air National Guard, provides for about 30% of the energy that our entire base uses. So that was based on some congressional money that was given to us by then Representative Sanders. And that solar farm is still functioning. In the interim, the lease, what it did was open up about $2.7 million. It was a project that we had been working, but typically these projects are multi-year projects to get them paid for and completed. But it's a $2.7 million battery resiliency project for our fire department. So we'll capture some of that solar energy, store it in batteries, so that in the event of power failure in the airport or a national disaster, if you will, then the fire department would be self-sufficient to support the airport if something bad would happen. So I appreciate the lease definitely affected that. Definitely affected. We have a number of ones that have about multiple years, but the one that is probably the most significant, we're awaiting. I think the best way to say it is that we're appearing winning comp from congressional supporters to get us a significant number of millions of dollars that would expand our solar farm, create kind of a microgrid that would allow us to store some of the energy that we get through solar and use our energy during off-peak hours. So that we were not putting in substantial draw on the network that we have to. So not only the expansion, but we're using our energy. So yeah, that'll be a multi-year project, but none of these balls will be moving forward if we have to get that lease through. So we absolutely appreciate the work that you're doing. So pending any of your questions, happy to dive further into those.
You want to share that the final versions of it?
I got be the first of other business that we can have. And the other thing I've had the opportunity to be out and see your base, and before I had done that, I just assumed it was the hangar you could see from the main terminal, and it's much more. And if you're open, I would encourage other current and maybe future committee members. We couldn't meet out there without warning a meeting, but individually we could go out and have tours, because I think it's, we could have out there is worth showing up.
Yes. Mr. Russell here is one of our honorary members that works on that's our doors are open and take over the open to Burlington City Council and any other civic leaders in the region. If people just reach out to me here or through public affairs, we're more than happy to not only to see the facilities, but come meet our air. People that actually make this happen.
Really, I mean, we have 20 so company presidents tonight start that all work to support the National Guard, and I can tell you that from my experience there, and every one of those people who run big companies, to go over there to meet the members of the National Guard and to see how talented, dedicated we are so lucky to have that in our community and to see all the people. And when you go over, I encourage you to walk in the crowd and don't meet the big shots. Meet the guys who do the work. Talk to them and see why they're so dedicated to be here from every state in the nation. They come to Vermont to be part of Vermont National Guard. That's a tribute to what we have going on. #1 in the country. And as a business person, somebody who has a lot of employees myself, I'd love to hire all these guys to come in and work for some of our companies. So just what an honor it is to have them in there, and I can speak to those company presidents and bank presidents that have been part of this now for about 8 years. And all the privileges we've had to just interact with a lot of those members and their families, and especially with families with their sacrifice.
Interesting.
Well, thanks for coming today. We really appreciate that. Do you have other questions?
No, I think in terms of numbers, I think that I guess that it's gonna be a request to maybe make a presentation and share the mapping, the noise mapping, and any related emissions information that becomes part of that, as well as you know, maybe some continued updates on the ground emissions work, for like, you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying it exactly right. But
No. Yeah, we didn't specifically talk noise, but I can tell you that that is not something that we would just put aside by any stretch. But I do recognize for us to move forward with anything meaningful, we're gonna need data, because people are gonna ask for it.
Yeah.
So we have flown different profiles, we have put people out in the community to go hear what the difference is. We think we have some ideas, but we need the backing to make sure that we have data to move forward with something, so if we get to that point, we certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about it in relationship to emissions, but you know, obviously noise is a huge issue. You
Understood.
I know you understand this, but you don't need to beat that.
That's okay. Well, with any luck, Councilor Bergman and I will be here for another year, and we'll have you back. So I guess it's another. We'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, guys. I have drafts of this, but I don't think I saved the final. Can I keep? I see that I see the signature, so. I failed miserably.
You're up again. You're a regular now. Everybody knows your name. Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we had a. It would be a bad idea. I frequently have bad ideas, and that's why we have changed. Of course, correct. So this is, our next item is the GMT Fare Policy Resolution. We have had a little bit of email circulating about this afternoon. The city attorney just weighed in on this draft resolution.
Does anybody need a printed copy?
I do. I could use that, and I don't think that I saw the city attorney's.
You may not. They're included in this version.
Just exceptionally minor corrections.
Yeah, there's
Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't.
Any changes are obviously highlighted on the
Did you want one to refer to?
I haven't been on the phone. Did the 2021 get changed on the top? That was something that I didn't notice.
No.
We're
Right there in the year
2021, yes.
Yeah.
That's in the template.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that the resolution we passed last night.
That one was correct. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
I didn't correct the 2.5. I meant the 3, the 10 minus 10 under 10, but 2.5.
It doesn't matter.
Right. It's still factual. It's just not as dramatic. Okay. So we have before us this another resolution around GMT, and I'll let you guide our discussion, I guess.
Sure, and so I think that what Chapin and I would like here is just clarity based on the city council's previous positions that there would be fare-free service continued for the College Street shuttle and perhaps expanded to the city loop. That we think that with the new fare system that we have, that it addresses some of the equity concerns that we had with the previous fare system. And we've also been working hard to have a more simplified fare system. so that there would be fewer unique rules on particular routes and that there'd be a standardization of fees. And so, you know, one of the things that, you know, obviously Burlington is our most important municipal partner from a financial standpoint, also from a ridership standpoint. And so we're sensitive to the council's desire to have fare free service on those routes. But we would just like to have that be paused. One of the things that, you know, this is an area where I think that there may be a little bit of distance with Chapin and I, is that I think that with one of the discussions that we had when Chapin was on a well-deserved vacation, you know, we talked about the potential of there being a pause so that we would revisit this issue so that there wouldn't be, hey, this is a decision that's set in stone for forever. And I just want to make sure that you all don't feel like that we have to make a decision today about, you know, what will be in perpetuity for our fares, because the thing that I want to do with our fare system is learn from it. And I'm sure that we're going to figure out that a lot of assumptions, you know, some things will pan out like we expect and some things won't. And I don't want to assume that we're not going to have a feedback here and saying, hey, now that we have some data, you know, it may make sense to have some fare free routes. So I think that that's. And I do just want to say I very much appreciate the support of the other resolution. I'm very happy that Shelburne's voting on a similar resolution tonight. And so hopefully that is a trend that will be continued with the other municipalities. And also have heard some positive feedback from legislators that have offered some potential solutions. And so I think that, you know, nobody is saying that they're getting to going to fulfill the entire gap, but they would fill the gap so that, you know, it wouldn't be a 29% reduction. Half of that if they were provided there. So, which is still, you know, half more than we want, but to me is less, makes it less of an existential crisis for us.
So talk to me about the timing of this and the necessity of the timing before I ask the real question.
Okay. So timing in the sense that
when does Burlington need to decide this and to pass this?
you know, really, I think that ideally it would be before we return to fares, and so we've been lucky that we've been unable to return to fares as of yet. I will say that we got some good news that we made it over a certain hurdle with Apple today that we haven't previously been able to. And we're now in a position where we're going to start testing the app to make sure that it actually works. And once we do that testing, we should then be able to have it available to the public.
Yeah. So you're talking, and you were talking about 4 weeks.
4 to 6
from
weeks.
when that so that's helpful. Is there something?
Yeah, the other piece to that though is Burlington getting its property tax bills out to members of the public.
Yes, and so that's in June. Right, I mean, we got to decide that. I mean, tax bills happen as a result of the budget. You can't do it without passing a budget. So
yeah,
that's the timing. I say that because I think that one thing that may be missing if we haven't done this already is the outreach to the actual current riders on these two routes.
Okay.
I would really like for there to be a period of sustained communication with folks who are right now, they're riding these loops for free.
Yeah.
And to let them know this is what's being thought of, this is what the fares would be, this is how if you're gonna qualify for the reduced ones, this is what you're gonna get, this is how you get to do that. And then to provide feedback to you all, provide feedback to us.
And so you would like that to happen before you consider the resolution?
I would really like that if that is possible. When all is said and done, right? The people who are using it are the people who are gonna be affected by this. There are people who are not gonna be riding the bus for free. And I would really, like for them to know and get that. And I don't believe, we just watched it for hours last night. You can do all the public, sure. But when it hits, when the rubber hits the road, that's when people go, oh, I do. Yeah.
I can tell you that I interact with riders and I ask them about the return of the fares and they're like, what are you talking about? Sure. So you're absolutely right that, there's just some folks that I think that we've become so blind to signage because there's just so many signs that.
This is like you got something there. Maybe we're even trying to get some community action people, to help do some surveys to ride the bus, to get information out. I mean, it could be through AALV, and other organizations, because if new Americans are riding the bus, over the speed, they're not reading, maybe they're not, So I just really would like us to let people know and solicit their responses so that I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like the 5 days before when it hits.
But I think we're gonna get this regardless. It's all routes, right? We're gonna have the same phenomenon on all routes when we return to fares.
Already done the outreach about the return fare.
So I think that this is, like College Street. It's really.
City Link doesn't change. It's historically been fair. So I guess the question is, do we need to interview those folks? I'm just trying to balance his staffing needs, which.
And I'm suggesting that we try to help, to get folks who are, could help us do this work. But, College Street has been free for like
Long time.
35 years. I mean, I've been there since I was a counselor first time around. Right? I mean, that's like embedded in people's thought that you can go from the boathouse to the university and the hospital. You're gonna ride up that hill for free. And we listened last night that hours upon hours, and you were only there for part of it. Chapin was there for the whole bloody freaking thing. And clearly, process is a big concern. And unfortunately, foreign working folk aren't as vocal and engaged. They just suffer in silence. I don't want folks to not know. So that is, I really believe that we should be letting the people on the two routes that we are saying we are not going to do what we did previously, which is pay to have these routes be free. We're considering that.
And so that only was free on College Street. It never was enacted for the city.
Right.
Okay, so.
Yep, that was what I was trying to convey. While the council made the action in 2022 on North Winooski Avenue to be fare free, because we've been fare free since COVID.
Yeah.
There has
So I'm good with saying, what you don't know can hurt you, but in this case it won't. So the College Street shovel is one that I think really does need a focused outreach so that the people who are riding that bus up and down know what is coming, how they can make that system work, how they can alert their representatives on the city council that to tell them this is terrible. I can't believe we're doing this. This is fine. you know, and I was wondering when y'all were gonna do it. Whatever other things people say.
One of the reasons why I think that the request is not going to be as difficult as it would normally be is that because we already have plans to have staff at the transit center to be helping people with signing up for their ad, that I think that that would be a somewhat easy add-on to get people's opinion. The other thing that I'll say, and this will probably cause Chapin's head to blow me off, but you know, my finance director is like, why are we not having fare free? We need that $57,000. And, you know, I was very principled earlier when it's like, no, we want a simplified system. We don't want to do rules. We don't, you know, all of that. But the reality is that that's 57,000 extra local dollars that would be great.
That you'll get other ways.
What? Yeah,
You're gonna get it through fares instead of through the taxpayer.
yeah.
So
Then there's-
GMT's harmless either way, it's just who's paying the bill.
The one thing that is different is that the fares is not treated purely as a local match where your 57,000 is. So it is a little better.
That's a good point.
I mean, the way I see it is, like, we have, like, you know, an example with this resolution we passed about funding, we have a very serious financial issue about, you know, without solving, we risk losing a lot of service. Like, it's almost a third of the service. And so it seems like we have to reinstitute fares on these resort fine $57,000.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we let people know it's gonna happen, and also there's people who can become sensitized to this, right? And get reduced rates. If they understand how to do that,
Yes.
they meet the qualifications.
And the thing there that I just want to make sure we understand is that all of our discounts right now are based on age and disability.
Okay.
Not based on. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that we had explored that, and our concern is that we are already historically about half of our ridership has already met the discount rate, and that if we added at economics then like it would be like 80 to 90% of people.
So it's just age and disability.
Just age and disability.
I mean, this does speak to the need for TDM and bus passes within that, which makes it harder, fair fee than free, and then you sort of. It's a different conversation. I mean. The differences for College Street is that we have historically paid that. And so we have done that for GMT. And people have gotten that for years.
And I do know that like back in 2020, the cost for that route to Burlington was like around 20,000. And the reason why it lowered to 57,000 is that when suddenly all routes were free, there was less traffic on the College Street shuttle. And so therefore, the 57, it was reduced because of the reduced ridership on that. And so if we do, I just want to.
Headways.
Yes.
And headways, we're now 45 minutes instead of 15.
Oh, yes.
So a third of the
Probably
service.
why.
Yeah,
It's their direct relationship between the two.
Yes.
right.
Okay. So Chapin probably understands better than I do, but it was the service level as opposed to ridership.
So if we had I'm just asking, we explore.
Sure.
If we had a resolve clause that basically said that there would be outreach,
I mean, I would, and that's why I asked in terms of the timing. I'm good. I would love to see, I mean, if you can do the outreach now to hold off on this. I am inclined to support this, you know, I mean, I think it makes sense. What we, you know, I don't want this to be done, people sort of go, it's a fait accompli. I want them to sort of know that for the College Street shuttle. And I want us to, particularly with the lack of income sensitivity, age sensitivity, even disability sensitivity. Yeah, good. Income, not so good. I want us to keep focusing on this so that we can get to the TDM, so that we can start to bring this into that world. We need to do that, and planning now is looking at things and has a study, which is looking at not new development for TDM, others, existing, just wherever people are living, people are working, people are shopping, people are going to the doctor and stuff, and so that transportation options is the way they're looking. So I think that doing this in a measured way will allow us to start to integrate into that planning and that work.
So in terms of process for this resolution, it seems like if the outreach was done on College Street Shuttle, can we bring this back for our next meeting, and would that be soon enough? Because you're saying we'll at least 4 weeks notice, right?
At least 4. It'll probably, by the time we do our user testing to say, hey, it's working, before we make it live for download, I think that will be this week, and so 4 weeks starting next week. I mean, that's pretty much.
Gets us to the first meeting in April.
Yeah.
Our meeting in April, and it sounds like that might be soon enough that we could take action then.
So
we can get it on.
meeting will be 4 weeks out, the council will then be a 5th or 6th week out.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's necessarily achieving the timeline you just laid out.
Yeah, if the full city has that council.
If we needed to, we could have a special take action.
I do that, so we're gonna meet when, we're gonna meet on the first is organization day. No, so I'm thinking of the council, right? We back off,
It's 16th, and then I don't know what our April schedule might be.
Checking right now.
But I know that we have 2 weeks after our organization.
15th and then May 6th.
May 6th. So, and that's like we're right in.
so the 23rd would that not be our
23rd is our normal.
right? So could this outreach on the College Street Shuttle be done in time to have a report to us on the 23rd, so that we could act on the 23rd, and then it would go to the first meeting in May of the council?
I hope to have fairs restarted by then, but I could certainly have something, some initial reports back to you on the 23rd. I also can say that, if we have our staff asking people that are getting on and off the College Street Shuttle, do you want this to remain fair? Yeah, or free, remain free. They're gonna say, yeah, of course they are. Yeah, and so I think that we just need to be prepared that I think that the overwhelming, response to that outreach is going to be that people would want anything to be free to.
So the way I look at it is that we are temporarily changing this policy for that route for these reasons. And we're gonna look at it again in a year. And this is what the fares are going to be, and this is how you get get a pass and work that system, and this is how, if you are eligible, this is how you're going to get to have it free. And if you want to talk to somebody about what the city council is considering, I mean, you can give them my name, I told that they could give them marks, right? You know, for feedback, so it's not,
To Gene's, home line.
my home landline for this, was discontinued nineteen seventy-three, Wendy had it, right, we just did that, but you can give them my cell phone.
Don't give it myself.
You can give them my cell phone, and so I think is if you've got comments about it, so I don't think you're asking them. I think you're letting them know this is what we are considering. And this is the way that this will work. And if you would like if you have comments for the city council's committee that's looking at it, you know, you can do that, and you're not giving them marks.
No. I have another idea though, and like, this is the last, and I actually asked the city attorney this, can we as a committee recommend something from the current council to the next council? And I was told, yes, that's proper, they don't have to do anything with it, but.
Yep.
So one idea would be for us to do a little bit of outreach and have a couple of individual counselors who used to sit on this. Bring this forward for the meeting on the 15th, if we thought a week's worth of outreach was enough, or 2 weeks or something. I didn't want to get into the logistics that are set up by waiting until our regular meeting on the 23rd.
Well, I like to make things work really well all the way around. I think it does depend on the effect, you know, on the outreach and the effectiveness of that. And again, I'm not saying you should be polling them to say, do you want to pay fares on this, right?
So in terms of process, how about this? What about the approach? Because I think ultimately Clayton's trying to manage a whole historic reintroduction of a new system, and with half the staff that he used to have, is what if the approach was adding some you must do outreach language to this, say, then the outreach will include flyers on the College Street shuttle saying, call Gene, you know, reach out to GMT and provide feedback. GMT can compile all the feedback, and then in the council packet for the 15th would be the whole list of feedback. And that way, I'm just sensitive to, if it doesn't get approved till May 6th, it may bungle what's already a tense relationship with the state. Because all the Clayton's effort to get more money from the legislature is dependent on him quickly delivering and implementing fares. So I just don't want to be sideways with the hand that we're trying to get fed from. So I don't know if that means, but we could put signs up on the buses in a day or two, so that the outreach to the people who are on that bus would be direct and instantaneous before a council action. I don't know if that meets your intent, but that's a concept.
I'm also meeting with the Teamsters again on Thursday. I can ask them how strongly they feel about the letter they sent.
About the way.
How strongly they feel about the letter that they sent.
Oh, I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't try to back them off of that. I mean, I understand what they're saying. It makes perfect sense. This is just the other piece of it, you know, in the idea that, you know, we all gotta figure out how to be in this together. I'm not crazy about that. I did shape it, because if you get a major negative, and there are compelling reasons why we should do it in a different way, that makes it hard, and then you get that feedback in the packet. And it causes you know, people who aren't at this table, who haven't spent the time with this, they don't know. So then it'd be better for us to vet it first.
And I really don't want the new council to have their first introduction to GMT be something that's a controversy that some councilors would support. So,
You know, question of how quickly you can roll this out to the council. is gonna be seated in. It. So we would be individuals, sort of. After that, I that's what, the timing though,
Speaking of that, I take it Hannah's not.
Hannah's on?
Is she
No,
on
she's
or is
not.
she not?
No, she's not, she said she's gonna be late, but she had an emergency at work.
Oh, no problem.
Yep.
I just knew that this would be our last meeting.
Yeah.
So,
so I don't know how to,
Well, I mean, I still am open, I'm supportive of this, I think it's just a reality, I also agree that it would be good. Not just on the College Street shuttle, but particularly on the College Street shuttle, but. Like we know, like Gene had said, it doesn't matter how many times you tell people, they still act like. They don't, they still don't know because they're not necessarily listening. Or reading, but. I think, I'm just wondering if there's a path to doing this as. To getting it done on the 15th, not obviously as a Tuke action if it was. If we were required first to do some sort of outreach, but if we could do outreach for 2 weeks, we could still get in by Tuesday.
I am open to co-sponsoring with you. For that meeting, if the outreach is done before that, we get a chance to sort of look at it as two counselors, not the two. And it looks okay, and it looks like we've done a decent shot. This is a focused way of getting people who are on that shuttle who may not be riding the bus otherwise, may not even be going to the transit center.
We'll have you post the resolution on the bus as they. So they can.
That's an effective way. People they're gonna read that, they're gonna look at this and go, what?
Exactly. I'm on a job as a paralegal, that's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
I guess just to, so I don't know what the measure will be of us deciding that enough outreach has been done.
I think the measure will be probably my comfort level,
Okay.
right? Because you're comfortable
I'm
without
comfortable
it.
already.
You're comfortable already. So, doing between tomorrow and the deadline is if it's a.
Tuesday at noon.
But we have to tell the city attorney that on Monday that we're gonna have something.
Tuesday at noon.
That's where we have to get it in, but we have to let them know that we're going to get something in on the 8th.
Okay.
So
As the eclipse happened, we should say yes or no.
yeah, so like if we could get something on the 5th,
Okay.
Which is-
That's pretty tight.
well, I mean, I'm not, you're pushing for it to be tight. I push it later,
I understand.
right? So like you're getting whipsawed by yourself on that.
That's usually my rule of thumb.
It's 10 days. I guess the question is, are flyers on the buses sufficient?
I don't think so. I don't think that they're necessary. I think we need to we gotta figure out a way, whether it's the drivers or, that can be problematic. For folks, so I'm not in favor of like rushing this to get this there, so I don't have great answers for you in this short time frame.
I have an AmeriCorps person, but I think would love to work on this project.
Yeah.
So I'll see. Sure.
What's the what's the average ridership on the bus, on each bus you have is there a way to,
I can't off the top of my head, but I do know that our planning folks can tell you.
I don't think that I had, whenever I see it go up and down, I'm not full.
Yeah. It definitely depends on.
So I'm gonna take the chair's, we're not gonna say that we're. So
You're right.
I'm going to, I think I'm gonna put a pin in this, I guess, here. Clay's gonna check with his AmeriCorps person, try to scheme up other creative ways to do notice. We're going to circle back offline and understand what that is, and they have an action plan for getting information to Gene and I by the 5th or 6th or something like that. And then, right, and then we're gonna make, maybe even do the 7th. There's a College Street shuttle run on the weekends too.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes here.
And then we're going to, get together with that information and potentially sponsor a resolution to be introduced at our first council meeting, maybe one of the actions that we do.
So, yeah, I mean, so, I mean, I do think that we should probably also, communicate with the mayor-elect at this point, to let her know that this is happening, and I would think actually that it would be, I mean, it could be all 4 of us, clearly our rep to the board. You're recommending this. Yes?
I am, yes, I am recommending this, having heard from the drivers, having this new policy, and I do think there's an economic piece. I know you talked about disability and age, but the way the fares are structured with the cap, there's a economic protection that didn't exist.
Yep, that's important. So I think that the rep to the board, the general manager. I don't know how you want to communicate with her.
I can, well, I guess you two are a quorum of the committee. I could include just the chair and Clayton in a communication to make sure that we're not violating open meeting law.
Well,
We will be a committee.
well, and the other
That's true.
The other thing is that, and I think that sooner the better.
Yeah.
But we could. I would move that we would authorize a communication to the mayor-elect from the committee, and, you know, joined by the city's rep to the board and the general manager, that explains the resolution, the potential for a resolution and the outreach that's going to be done previous to the introduction of it, with the, you know, and that it is anticipated to go before the full council on the 15th. So no surprises.
Is that clear enough? Is that clear? Yeah. Point for Jacob too, I guess.
Yeah, it is for me, and is it clear for the notes?
Okay, good. I would second that motion. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. And if we can, we'll move on to VTANG.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We spent a lot of time with you last couple.
I like it.
Okay, next we have.
For Sheldon.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
good luck with Sheldon. Are you going to there in person?
I'm gonna Zoom it, because they don't think they have me on until after 8. And my wife does have opinions about location. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Next, 4.3, we have a BikeShare update. I'm not sure who's giving that. Katie.
Well, Katie was here, Jeremy Lynch is still on.
Katie's.
Okay,
Hey
Yep.
there, everybody. Katie
Thanks.
here. Yeah, Jeremy should be on if you can and allow him to enter the meeting. Or as a panelist. Sorry, Maddie. There you go.
Okay, well, I'll let you take over then, Katie or Jeremy.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I don't have my video on. I'm in public right now. But Jeremy and I are here, Katie Martin with CATVA and Jeremy Lynch with Bird. Just to follow up on the request to come and give you all an additional update based on what further information you wanted to hear after the February 27th memo update that Julia and her team provided. So we're really here. We don't have a presentation or anything, given we have 10 minutes left. I think if you had some direct questions that we could answer in terms of following up, then we might be able to give you a better update, if that makes sense.
So the one question that I've got relates to the parking of the bikes that I saw, and I sent pictures that you got, Katie, and you forwarded. And so at our last presentation in the fall, I think it was in the fall, there were going to be some steps taken so that that did not happen. And I'm just wondering where that is going, what is going to be done so that our sidewalks are not blocked by bird bikes.
Certainly, I'll have Jeremy chime in a little bit, and I think that no matter what we do, the users are also part of this. And so I think there may be instances where we find bikes parked incorrectly. And so the reporting and the education to the users is going to continue to be a big effort of CATMA's, and birds really. And I am also looking at the community too for that support. And so I can't say there's going to be 100% of the greatest users that are parking every bike perfectly, but I think what we're working on here with Bird and some of the things that they're working on in terms of, I'll let Jeremy speak to them. We hope that that will decrease what those numbers that we saw last year. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, I would say, I mean, a vast majority, probably 90% of the people that do ride the bikes park them correctly. You know, the photo from last week was a bike that had its rear tire out slightly into the sidewalk. And, you know, the best thing the good thing is that we have the comms channels open for those folks for you know, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch your name, but when you reported that, the channels to report that in basically either community mode through the app or Vermont 311, those tag us immediately. So like as soon as you'd send it, we're instantly notified. The FMs are instantly notified that there's a parking that needs to be corrected and they're on top of it. You know, our response time last year was actually normally in a market at the SLA is around 2 hours. We were in a lot of times, you know, under 30 minutes, the majority of the time that we did get those. You know, the best thing we can do is communicate to our members about where to park and how to park. And that's one of the things we've already done when we just relaunched. Of course, we relaunched right before a massive snowstorm. But we were out for maybe 4 or 5 days. We'd already sent out messaging to folks about, you know, what the proper parking procedures are and where to park. And then, of course, we get hit with the snowstorm. But we're going to continue to message those folks. Like I'd said last time, we have the eco reps basically on Champlain and UVM that are working for Bird for some riding credit to constantly monitoring parking on those campuses. The FMs are hiring a couple of folks to actually increase the amount of what do I call it? Like loops, sweeps throughout the day. So they're available. One of the FMs is actually taking the summer off, so he's going to be dedicated constantly 7 days a week to monitoring the fleet. So that's really kind of where we sit as far as how that's going to look. And like Katie had said, we're relying upon people to park correctly, and you'll get it. The good thing about and the same thing we saw with the vandalism, it was few and far between. People in Burlington are good people. They're conscientious. Majority of people parked in the right location. You get the small percentages that ruin it for everybody. But for the most part, hopefully with some of the things we have instituted will mitigate a lot of that. We're not going to catch everyone right in the act. The thing we caught some, so just for an example, last week, some of the UVM kids before the storm parked incorrectly. We were able to get to them within 30 minutes of when they were discovered. Messaged the email or emailed all the students who rode for the last time and gave them basically, listen, if this happens again, you guys are gone from the program. So, there are mitigating factors we can actually institute. The one thing that's important to know for us to institute or to, remove people from the program is that we need for those bikes to be reported to us. So we can see who rode that last, so we can corrective measures in doing that. And yes, the FM can be there, but if someone's walking by and someone sees someone getting off a bike, it's super easy to report who that person is. And that's kind of, we rely upon our members in the community to kind of help us out. And that's really how that's worked for us. Overall, I would say last year, the program was a big success as far as ridership goes. And again, we have, obviously, as I said last time, there is room for improvement and we're working towards that.
Well, I'm not satisfied that I took both of those pictures that I sent in to Katie. One bike was not just a little bit in the, neither one was just a little bit in the sidewalk. In fact, the space between, this is on Green Street, between the fire hydrant and the bike. I mean, it just, and the crosswalk going across the street was just wrong. I'm not really pleased with having, when I see this, to have another app on my phone that I've got to then, burden myself to make sure that somebody is walking the sidewalk. I understand and will do that going forward, but I want more proactive work from Bird. Colin here has talked to me and he may have some ideas about what other places have done that have been effective and have been on the company and the users as opposed to the community to police it. So and I was heartened by the report that was given last in the fall, I believe it was, and the proactive measures that were going to be taken. So I'm hearing a backsliding on that, which doesn't make me particularly happy. So anyway, that's my perspective on this. I would like to see more proactive work be put out there by Bird, so our sidewalks are not blocks or handicap access. Sides streets and sidewalks is not impaired.
Thanks for bringing up that, Jean. I was just talking with Jeremy about that proactive slide, and I think that right now we are working on addressing all of those. And I think we can look back at those a little bit closer and provide you guys with more update on those specific proactive measures. So at least you understand the work that we're putting forth right now. And I think I heard you say something that Colin, I apologize, I'm not sure who Colin is, but if Colin has some ideas to share based on some other communities, we're working on gathering that data from the Regional Planning Commission partners, as well as our folks up on campus. So we're really interested to hear more about that and those ideas and what you're all hearing from other cities as we pull together our research as well.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to allow Colin to ask his questions in just a moment, but I had a follow-up on Jean's question. In the memo that we got on our meeting on the 27th, there were 4 discrete action items that were mentioned that would be part of the parking management strategy for your 2024 relaunch. And I'm wondering if which ones of those have been implemented?
I believe all of them except for the additional park support coordinator with the FMs.
Infield bike coordinator?
Excuse me?
The infield bike coordinator?
Exactly. I believe that's something that Bird is progressing towards as the increase in ridership starts to happen. Jeremy, you can chime in on that part, but I believe the other measures, UVM's rack infrastructure, technology piece, and the FM increase in FM hours.
Yeah, those if I'm looking at the 4, I'm not sure what 4 the gentleman is speaking of. If it's increased personnel, eco rep, sweep frequency, and uni solution.
No, there were 4. It was in a memo to the committee, Julia Orsaki.
Yeah.
And they're implementing UVM's bike rack, a map for app integration. And then implement Bird's new proprietary image review product. The in-fleet bike coordinator and implementation of more bike parking / racks. Those were the 4.
Okay, so the racks and infrastructure is something that the city, and I would think we'll be working with the city on. I'm not sure where that sits, but
okay.
So that would be the only additional piece there.
Okay.
That I didn't mention.
Then just Colin, welcome. So if you want to state your name just for the record, and then you go ahead and ask your questions.
Oh, sure. Hi, my name is Colin McDermott. I'm a resident and a student here at the University of Vermont. And I used the BikeShare, and I've used several BikeShares throughout the East Coast. And I'm originally from Washington, DC, and I've seen how successful Capital BikeShare has been. And then I've done research on other BikeShares like we have there is up in Canada with Dixie, and then also in Boston, the BikeShare there. A lot of them feature docks.
Yes, correct.
And as a user, I do find the bikes where you can generally park closer to your destination, like Bird is doing, as convenient. I've also found it to be a pretty big problem starter with parking and moving of the bikes even after they've been parked. Have you considered moving towards docks at all?
So great question, Colin. And actually we had a dock system previously. It was quite expensive. Folks were we were raising funds and asking businesses in our community to contribute to the system. And there was, we were able to make some things happen and get a system on the ground in the area. But unfortunately, the company flopped, merged and then flopped. And I think actually when we ended up going into this new system with Bird having to go out for an additional new RFP, we actually found that the dockless system in our community was far more successful in terms of generating point-to-point trips than the docked-based system that we had explored in the community for a few years. So I guess I'd be hesitant for us to explore going back to a docked system in our community. But we have Bird here right now, and so I think if we can learn from what other systems outside of docked systems that are doing well throughout the states and maybe in Canada, if we can learn from them and try to think about how to institute some of those in our community, I think that would be I'd say that's what we should encourage ourselves to look at doing. I hope that helped answer your question.
It did, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Colin.
Oh yeah, and I guess referring to that, I know the company Lime, they have bikes and scooters in other cities. And they have a feature where in order to lock the scooter or bike, you have to submit a photograph. And if you don't submit a photograph with proper parking, you'll face like a fee or like a fine. Has that been something that you've considered?
I believe that is part of the system. Jeremy, you can speak to that.
Yeah, so you have to take a picture at the end of your ride.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier the accountability feature of it. It's just like you're issuing a warning, and then if it happens again or isn't corrected, you'll just be the user won't be able to ride anymore, or is there any anything else for accountability on that?
Well, again, we leave it open to our partners to decide how they want to approach that. So fining is certainly a thing. And I know that Lime doesn't fine in a vast majority of their markets. And that's just a topic we've discussed with the folks at UVM and Champlain and CAPMA about how to approach that. And certainly we can approach it or talk about it with the city. It's just not something they felt comfortable doing at that moment, but it's certainly something that we could discuss and go forward with. Again, it's left up to, we leave those up to the partners to decide that's how they want to go about it. And if they feel like that's the best way to manage a program and to make sure that those, the bad actors are on the path to correction, if they think fining is the best way to go, we're happily to institute that. It's very easily done. It's just one of those things that we leave up to the partners. It's a discussion that we have with our partners, and we've had that with Katie and her team before.
Yeah, and I believe that Chapin and Julia and some of the folks over there have been on those communications. I'm not sure that we've had much input from the city, but I think typically trying to work through some of those conversations with the folks up on the campus first. And they've decided not to pursue that at this time.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. And thank you. I have nothing further as well. We appreciate you coming in and answering questions today. Thank you.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all. We look forward to update as we see ridership, increase and what that, coming back to talk to you all maybe early in the summer.
Excellent. Okay. We look forward to that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Next we have license plate reader technology.
Yes, we wanted to give you a brief update on this, given there's effort afoot to look at how we operate a more efficient and financially effective program for our parking services team. And since we are starting, we have been interacting with our lobbyists around some potential changes to state statute. Wanted to make sure you were up to date and could weigh in on this policy direction. Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie Spurgeon, Director for Parking and Traffic. I recently went to the State House and spoke with Transportation Committee. Yes. Yeah. About LPR and how it would benefit the city and why our lawyers feel like we're not authorized to use it. The reason that we started to go down this road was because of the gap in the general fund, and Parking Services currently contributes about $600,000 a year, and we would like to do more than that. And this technology would help us to do that. We want to be part of the solution. So the technology would be fixed to a car, and the car would drive around, let's say in the garage. So the car would read the license plate if someone did not have the credentials that are needed. So either a monthly parking pass or paid for their parking with Park Mobile or a kiosk, then the vehicle would then alert the person driving it, who would then park, get out and write a ticket as they normally do. The license plate recognition software wouldn't keep that photo. The only time that this photo would be kept is if it were a monthly parking permit, which is one of the new options that we hope to come up with. So sort of like a punch card. So if someone has pre-purchased 30 punches, then the photo would say you were in the garage on this day. So you've used one of your punches. Attorney Haley has written some language, which I included in the document online to change the proposed statute at the state level.
We're happy to get your feedback. Is in addition to being positive for the general fund, also really can provide a whole new level of product. Jackie had talked about. Currently, we offer a monthly pass in the garages or a daily, and we don't have the ability to say, hey, with the new flex workers, for 10 days a month, you can park and get a discount. There's nothing like that, and without our ability of having an efficient management program, we really can't offer that. So we want to get your feedback, hear if we're going the right direction, get any thoughts from you this time.
What was Senate Transportation's response?
So they were curious why we thought we couldn't use it. Because the statute doesn't explicitly say that parking services or some parking enforcement that's not police could use it. Most of them were on board and thought that we could use it, and then there was one gentleman there who thought that if we were allowed to use it, then it would snowball into the state police, who also want to use this technology to issue tickets to people. Or maybe do like speed radar or something.
They were concerned about that, or they were supporting?
They were concerned about that because I think they don't want that. They don't want the state police to use this information.
Is there any indication that this is gonna make it into a bill that would authorize municipalities?
It might.
We have been working with Jamie Feehan, the city's lobbyist. There is a Senate Bill 182 that has been discussed as embedding it into that bill. Crossover is passed, so we haven't been in touch with Jamie in the last 2 days since crossover, but my understanding is to get it now, we need to catch it in the House side and attach it to that bill on the House side. So we're still eager and trying to sneak this in before the end of the session, but want to make sure that you're aware of what we're trying to do, so you're not surprised. There are other entities using this technology now. UVM is using it and St. Albans is using it. Our attorneys are indicating to us that they don't think the legal ground is all that clear, and so they're asking us to do the homework first, which I appreciate.
How do you feel, I noticed they're using it at UVM, and they have signage indicating they're using it. I'm wondering how you think, I mean, obviously the garages are different, but for on-street enforcement, how would it be a different use case, or is it not a different use case?
As UVM.
Yeah.
They're going through and doing it as we would do in the garage or on street. It wouldn't really be a difference. So if someone has a permit at UVM or is paid with Park Mobile, then it comes up in the system. They're using it the same way that we did. I think maybe the difference is they're on private property. We're not sure.
We're not
why.
public right away.
Yeah, but we're not sure exactly. And that was brought up in the meeting at the State House. I don't really know how they're using it either.
I think personally, I think it's a good idea. I like also the part about how we'll be able to keep track of garage usage too.
Yeah.
Like knowing when people are entering an accident, which I know. Especially when it's not using to identify the individuals, but just to know.
Right, yep, there's no personal information, it's just a license plate, which is public already.
So I like that. One of my complaints about the garages now, and although I'm happy when they're filled, or like the marketplace garage in particular, because it means that there's people downtown. But having to, sometimes now that you just drive through, you drive all the way up to the top and all the way back down, and when the garage is full, there's no spots. And there's no way to know that. And perhaps with a technology like this, we'd be able to know when to say the garage is full, and because right now, I don't think that's happening. But I'm happy when it's like that now, because it means that there's a lot of people.
So I guess that the only concerns I've got relate to privacy, making sure that that is that we've got built in the safeguards.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, just reading that paragraph, I think that, you know, the question of what the safeguards are to protect the connection of plate numbers to names via DMV.
Yeah.
Will be.
So
Quick answer that would be helpful.
there's a lot to it right there. We're CEDAR certified. So anyone that's in the office must be CEDAR certified. The office is the only people that have access to that DMV information. So they are the only folks that can put a plate to a name. The parking service agents that are out in the field or this camera, it's a plate, you have no idea who that plate is attached to.
And the hacking of the system. Oh,
I guess I don't know.
I hear about data breaches happening all the time.
We're currently using the system, so we have it already, so. I hope, knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen, that I don't have the answer to.
I think the important piece is that the two aren't connected until there's a non-payment. So as we're driving through streets, we're just, is someone paid, we're checking through, okay, paid, yeah, dump the photo. At the point where people don't pay within 30 days, then we need to find their address and mail them a letter. At that point, then we're connecting in that same space, the license plate with the address.
And the deletion is a human action, it's done.
The tickets are expunged after 5 years.
But if someone has a paid session, the software is just not recording the picture.
We're not even recording. So the only time that we would actually take a photo of that license plate is if they didn't pay and the parking service agent gets out of the car and takes the photo. Or if it is one of those punch cards, just so people can know on this day at this time, we saw that your vehicle was here. So you subtracted 1 day from your punch card. That's the only time that we would take those, and those we expect to expunge after 6 months.
And is that something that happens automatically by the program itself?
Yeah.
And you've got a periodic check to make sure that it's working well?
Yeah, we can do that. The program that we use is called Emission, and it's actually very good. They have good customer service.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. This just getting these fail safes because things happen.
I don't know, we have a former excellent garage maintenance team member here. Damien, you've seen the operations. I don't know if you ever put it on the site.
I think it will eliminate positions. I think that you've used the revenue right now in 2 positions that you've already asked to expunge and abolish are going to pay for that now. So I'm kind of really not understanding by finding out the information now. I don't think that the conversation we had prior to that is fitting a lot more clear to me now than it did before. Because you won't have anybody that will walk the beat itself and do each one of those license plates on their feet, where now they're pretty much driving around and it's doing for them. So I believe that will eliminate positions at some point in time for the union. It's great for management side of it, but it's not good in my opinion on the side of the employees, because I've already gone down this road before when the garages were closed. And they were giving notices outside that the lights of vacancies were off, and I don't know why that's been taken away from parking as well. Like when you drove by the garage and the light was on, you were full, you couldn't get in. Once the light became available, giving an indication going out, for some reason that has gone away. But they used to be out on the hairpins, and that gave you a notification that they were closed. But there was a different system then that where if we were in the garage, we would make sure that 10 spots were always available and short the garage itself, so that way when people came in, there was a constant being able to find a spot. But there's just a couple of things after hearing the information that I have concerns with on from a union standpoint.
Great, and I think part of the conversation that Damien, you and I can certainly have is there have been an increase in union positions since I've started this job, and in our community, what the type of those positions are changes over time. And we should talk about how we add the most value for each employee. And in my hope that we can be delivering services that meaningfully kind of improve either through more maintenance workers in the garage, more safety presence, entering license plate numbers manually versus doing it by camera, in my mind is important because we don't have another tool right now, but is a less efficient way of doing work than something that exists
But
today.
they used to have security services that went through there during the summertime. I know that the Yellow Jackets at one point in time were down there to have that, but that's kind of gone away a bit. So it's kind of the broken window theory that if you're not having boots on the ground running, that the element's still there. So if you're driving around, you're gonna miss a lot of that element by not actually having the physical presence in the garage at the same time. So I think that there's some positives to it.
Yep.
And there can be some negatives to actually having that go through, but for a financial standpoint, that it's good on a business because I think it will still eliminate positions because you're not gonna need those people walking around, which takes a lot more time.
So I'd love for labor and management to have this conversation, so.
I didn't know, it was unexpected, I
Well,
had no idea, I was
Yeah,
really
no, I'm
not
not
expecting to be here for that, I don't normally attend these meetings.
Absolutely, and
It's a virtuous opportunity.
yes, it's fortuitous.
Well, it's not necessarily, like, I'm not blaming Chapin for it, I'm just saying that during the financial, because of COVID, most people aren't coming down to park. There's issues with the police, stuff that is obviously going down with the element that's downtown, so there are a lot of factors playing into it.
Yep.
I know that when I think I had talked maybe to Chapin about this before, about going through the garages recently, just because I was downtown and I hadn't been in the building in a long time, that I used to take care of. And by the time that I was there, I had to have that rooftop open and plowed by 9 in the morning. If I hadn't had done, we were losing revenue. Now, when I went up there, it was almost close to 1 o'clock in the day. And it's not even completely up, even close to the 4th level. So there has been some kind of transition of the lack of parking downtown. And it seems to be efficiently with the garages. So I don't know if it's because the gates should be back down again. So you can't just fly through and then leave. If you're an out of towner, you're not gonna pay the ticket. But I think that there was a more revenue based part of that, that once you're in the garage, you had, I think you're losing maybe, I could be wrong, 10% of revenue based on they could just come and go. And if you're not having the meters that officially got me today, that they're gonna miss some revenue just by the basis of only being there for a half hour. And then you're just gonna, or an hour, they're gonna miss them.
You know, so privacy was one, I think that it sounds like some work could be done between labor and management in terms of
Absolutely.
the impact on union jobs, that would be good for me. I'd like this to be a win-win-win. Right, if we can.
Well, Chapin and I went together for almost close to 12 years now. So
We're gonna get
always
11
help.
years, so.
I mean, it's a little bit of rock and roll, we always managed to get it worked out, so.
There you go.
So you don't require any action from us tonight, it's just.
No, it was a briefing and wanted to make sure you were in the loop. Clearly need to talk to labor and ultimately any sort of implementation of this is far beyond and needs council action. We're not there yet. This is just FYI what we're working.
Thank you
That's
very
good.
much for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I do think that when changes implicate union work, then this conversation should be had, generally speaking. That's just a general comment.
Well, it does have to be figured at some point because the revenue losses that parking is taking in right now, that you have to get those buildings back up, and whether they're gonna be demolished or they're gonna be repaired, that you don't basically have the revenue to do it now. So at some point in time, it's getting really close that those buildings are of age. So at some point in time, you have to have the finances. If you're not, you're gonna bond it. So.
Okay,
Through that, Damien.
I'd like to close this item.
Yeah.
Exerting my chair prerogative.
Yeah.
And move us along, because we are getting quite late, but since we're so late, I'd like to take a snack break.
I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah, these I brought these because it was our last meeting. Like a cookie?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, thank you.
Take care.
And now we're gonna move on to the director.
Sorry about that.
I'm expecting some more cookies.
That's why.
But I know you knew that.
I asked you.
Yeah, I know.
But because you're here and I value you.
We have more cookies.
Well,
Another round.
I appreciate that, too.
yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on to the director's report. Sorry for those of you online, we have no cookies.
Can you promote Megan here, Maddie? right. So, I think the only item, given the hour, is that we had said that we would discuss the employee feedback complaint we received regarding how we are approaching, Public Works is approaching water main breaks. And we had a productive meeting this morning with the Human Resources Committee with union engagement. And I have circulated to you all a investigation report that I put together based on my findings of working with Division Director Megan Moyer and talking to some union members. As you'll see in this report here, I fundamentally believe that we substantially did follow the protocols for the repairs on the breaks in question. That said, there are areas for improvement, and training and follow-up kind of procedures and policies need to be tightened up. Megan can certainly speak to some of that. And I am pleased to be working with a team that's rebuilding, but there's a lot of interest in the water distribution team of really taking the next step ahead on training and system development. So with that, Megan, do you want to highlight? I know you had a couple pieces even in addition to what we discussed today, this morning. And I can't hear you.
Sorry, just
There we
trying
go.
to remember how to share my screen when I only have, let's see, standby. Present. Yeah, hi all. So I just took the time to maybe detail a little further. Can people see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. I took the time to detail a little further about the various trainings that we're trying to do and other improvements. You know, anytime staff bring up a concern, it is always a good opportunity to kind of dive in, revisit things that we've done in the past and see where we can make improvements. So I just kind of went through to share with you all, and I can send this to you, the various things, the sort of running list of things that we've either already done, which are shown by the green check boxes, or are in progress, which are shown by the yellow check boxes. And then there's certain things that I have not yet gotten to. So the first one was, you know, sort of this realization that, again, there is a huge group of new staff. And while we have some really great folks that have joined us who do have experience, you know, Vermont has its own specific protocols on boil water. And so last week we brought in Vermont Rural Water. Paula Jackson came in as a trainer and did a 3-hour training for staff on the boil water protocols, which was great. There's a lot of great conversation. She sort of applauded us for our checklist and for our protocols, and once we revise it, to give it to her so she can make it available for other Vermont communities. Because this whole, as you read in the memo, this whole process came about, I think, in 2019. Previous to that, I think, and Jesse Greeno, who's been with us for a while, will attest to the fact of water mains were repaired, I think, in a sanitary condition, but certainly not as rigorously as they are now. One of the benefits of the Burlington system is that we do maintain a high chlorine residual, and that does serve to protect us against contamination that might enter the pipe, particularly total coliform. I've never been in a boil water situation, and I hope I never will be, in which we open up a trench and what we find is, you know, a sewer main break co-located with a water main break, because that, without a doubt, is a very, very serious situation. And it's one of the things I've flagged, that we really need to clearly identify that as being the highest risk. And that there may be additional things that we need to do for the consumers when that occurs. Mostly when we're talking about boil water, we're talking about minimizing soil coliforms from getting into the pipe. But nonetheless, you know, the protocols are the protocols. So the other things we've done are reminding staff of their right and their duty to escalate concerns about water quality as well as safety up the chain, and to make them aware that if direct supervisors are not being responsive, so if they let the manager, the working foreman know, or the manager or the director of operations know they have my phone number, my personal cell, as well as DPW Director Spencer's phone. Another thing that came up during the training, we previously have had our employees just use a color wheel. So it's a mixing of reagents, and then they have to compare the color of the reagents to a sort of color chart. There can be, it's hard, everybody reads it a little bit differently. And so while we have in the past, because they are somewhat expensive and are a little bit delicate, not provided digital chlorine analyzers, I am going to go ahead and do that for distribution staff so that they can both easily as well as accurately measure the chlorine residual, which is one of our best indicators out in the field. And then obviously we need to train the staff to use those analyzers. One thing that I think also needs to be clarified is actually writing out the procedure. Certainly the procedure lives in my head, and we do have a protocol with Public Information Manager Robert Goulding about who and how we notify people when there is a boil water, but I actually want to write it out for the staff. So should they encounter this situation, mostly they would be involved in making the decision and then initiating the proper notifications through me or other managers for a localized boil water notice. When we look at what happened on Lakewood, while I do believe that sanitary conditions were maintained, had we decided to call a boil water, based on my conversation with the state, it would have been limited to that one customer. And largely for the fact that had that one customer operated their system, their own service line could have potentially sucked in contamination, and without us flushing their line. We always tell customers to flush their systems, but I think in that situation, I would have wanted to go in and actually flush it for them to make sure that it was fully flushed and that we got good chlorine residual. So again, there would only be the one person. And so I think empowering staff to be able to make that decision and making sure that they have the materials necessary. If they're not able to contact somebody, I want them to be able to leave a door hanger, big red door hanger that clearly establishes if the person returns afterwards that they shouldn't be drinking the water, they need to be boiling the water. As we outlined in the report, and I think, we're going to continue to keep talking about it. One of the things that happened with that is while the original employee did believe that they shut down the water main, when the second employee came on site to finish the break repair, they noticed that there was water flowing out of the pipe, which was why the checklist was filled out as a level 1 break. And as far as I can tell, that all seems consistent. Just today, I followed up with the staff again to clarify to them that the C651 checklist, which again is an internal checklist, must be filled out at the time of the repair. So there has been a history with past staff, existing staff, not always filling it out in the moment and filling it out afterwards. It appears that may have been the case with this particular break. Again, the information that I'm getting about how the break was described, everything seems consistent, but I wanted to clarify to people that they need to be filling it out. And furthermore, I'm issuing the directive that once they fill it out, even though they're going to be turning it in, it's going to get scanned, it needs to be filed in a location where we can all find it quickly. I want them to be taking a picture of it and sending it to Eden, Rocky, and me once they're done with the repair, so that I know and I can sleep and know that was done. The other piece is, sorry, my dog is howling because there is a siren going by. The other piece that we go through periods where people are really good about this, but I also clarified for them that they have to notify the water break. We have a water break email listserv, which notifies a wide variety of people so that enough people all know that it's going on. And it just, kind of tunes me in, at least when I see it. And I know it with Chapin and with Rob Goulding and others, that something's going on, right? Just so I'm aware, so that I'm kind of, keeping my phone more nearby so that if people need to reach me, they can. And then I've come up with a whole bunch of different revisions that we need to evaluate for the C651 checklist. I want there to be clarification that the level 2 break, while it does allow for shutting down of the main, that it does require the maintenance of positive pressure during excavation. I want to be explicit about maintaining as much pipe pressure as possible until that air gap is achieved. The target is 20 PSI, and we had a variety of debates at the training about whether or not it really was possible to achieve 20 PSI and be able to still keep up with the water. So I think that we need to talk about that some more. I want to make sure that the level 3 break, that we actually break it out into better risk categories. I gotta get the dog out. Come here, come here, come here. You don't need to bark. I want to clarify that the sewage contamination issue, right, which is true E. coli, that is a higher level of boil water, oh no, than the mud contamination total coliform, and define what the clear actions are. There's a couple of other things that when my engineers put the checklist together, you know, it says on there to close down service connections, which is the curb stop for each of the individual houses. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not possible. And so we need to run through what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go into people's houses and tape off their taps if in fact it's one of these serious sewage situations and I don't even want them messing around with the water, so on and so forth. And then two other things that came up during the training, particularly around this issue of whether or not we're maintaining the 20 PSI or not, is the trainer thought that it would be a good extra step of confirming that contamination had not occurred in a level 1 or 2 break by taking a chlorine residual, not just at the end of the break when everything's repaired, but like once you get down there and there's still water flowing out of the pipe. If you take a chlorine residual and the chlorine residual is good, that's an indication that there hasn't been a contamination event and that you can kind of proceed, you know, per the checklist. So that's an extra thing that we are considering adding just for further documentation for ourselves and for the public that in fact we are managing things well. And then lastly, Mr. Greeno's out right now, but when he comes back, I really want to talk with him about whether or not we think that we could set up specific protocols for what I'm calling the sort of isolate and return framework, which is what, you know, we thought was going to happen on Lakewood, where we could shut the break down and return, but what are the extra steps that we might have to do? Because there is some operational flexibility that is appealing to me in being able to say it's freezing cold, it's dark, we don't have good lighting, you know, we don't have enough people, so on and so forth. Is there a way to shut it down and come back the next day and not have to issue a boil water? The answer may be it's not, you know, to be cut and dry and to be, you know, 100% black and white compliant. We should just do it if we need to and then issue the localized boil water. But I kind of want to talk through that more with staff. And then if we as staff come to an agreement about how we think we could do it safely, then would go back to the state to see if they agree. And with that, that's what I have thus far, but I anticipate that there'll be more updates and suggestions as we move forward.
I'd be curious to hear what Damien has to say. I would just say if you can go actually back to the share screen, Megan.
Yep, hold on. Sorry, I've lost my. Stand by. I remember I have to share first and then. Okay, which slide?
I think it's the second one where it talked about the list. Yeah, if you can, yeah.
I'll make it bigger. Hold on. Yep.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about since I first heard this is at what point city councilors should be made aware of things. And you know, clearly staff, you know, crew leaders probably are not the ones to, you know, have to do that. It's just an extra thing and trying to figure out, because I don't think every city councilor should be alerted. But the people
that are representing
Yes.
folks that are being impacted.
Yeah.
Should know, because we, you know, maybe we'll get questions, maybe we won't, but we should know what's going on. And so that to me needs to be part of this. And you know, I am not going to micromanage what happened here, but on the next page, the very last one seems to be what was implicated in this particular incident, and I'm just curious.
It would have been, I think the new piece of information, right, was that because I was treating it as such that we shut it down, and so that's what I was talking with the state about. But when we eventually talked to the working foreman, who was the one who returned the next day, he described a pipe in which water was flowing out of the 360 break in all directions. So that, plus the fact that I know that they flushed and that they got good chlorine residual, puts it, I would say, not squarely, to me, it is not a, once you had that information, it doesn't automatically kick you into the boil water category. I'm going to revisit that situation, because had the valves held, then we would have been in an isolate situation. And I still believe that the sanitary conditions were maintained, but it doesn't meet the letter of the law. But because of the additional information where there was water flowing out, I have no concerns about the quality of the water in that particular situation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess that the lesson that I'm hearing and taking and reading indicates that that extra work really is absolutely necessary to get greater clarity. But that's just what I'm getting. And so city council being part of this, I think, is something which is probably not as we're not getting the context that we may should, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying, you know.
Yep. Can I ask you about your previous question? So right now, without changing anything, if the 2 times that we've issued a boil water in the past, we absolutely notified the city councilors that were related to the area. And so those 2 situations, which I described in the memo, were the one where it was sort of citywide, or not citywide, the south end depressurization, and then the other one was the shore road. And to the best of my knowledge, we definitely notified the city councilors on that one. And I think that the city councilors, when we're issuing a boil water, whether it's for one customer, right, that localized situation, or the system-wide one, I have no problem with making sure that councilors are aware of that. Does that satisfy what your concern is, or
it may be that there's something where there was that, you know, like your last bullet that we just talked about, needing greater clarification, is probably a time that I would say we should know about it. It's rising to it's not quite a boil water, but it's significant, and there are issues. I might not be understanding it all.
I think as we revise these policies, we can look at where are the right points to elevate to the mayor, to the city council, and we're fleshing that out more clearly is good practice.
Yeah, and that's about as that meets where I'm at, and I'd love to hear Damien all of this myself.
Yeah, I would as well. I'm still like asking sort of the why is this issue before 2 city council committees today? I guess I just sort of want to understand more about the context on that. I read the memo and I read your report. I thought it was good, and I thought the issue was being addressed with internal procedure review and updates to those things, and I was personally satisfied with that. But then I heard that there's still more airing of this that's going on, and I'm just wondering what's driving that. I mean, just to get to the crux of
yes, how it unfolded is that the communication of concern was sent directly to counselors from the union. And then I was receiving questions from Councilor Carpenter on the work, and she had asked for my, as director, response to the concerns that were raised. So I promised to put together a memo, which I did, and then the chair of the HR committee, Councilor Carpenter, put it on the agenda for that committee.
Well, and because I think some of the concerns, as we understand them from AFSCME, sort of are related more to personnel management issues, which I don't think can be discussed here at the TOOC, but could be discussed within the Human Resources Committee.
Yep.
And I think, I mean, and this is proof that, so here are changes in protocols and in procedures. It relates to a vital utility. So it's you know, from my standpoint, I don't want to deal personally with the personnel stuff, right? That is HR, there's a whole universe here. But from the procedural stuff related to making sure that we're doing the right thing, I think it's under the jurisdiction of the TOOC, and it was raised in terms of the policies and procedures. So I think, I mean,
yep.
That's why
Okay. Okay, so that answers my question. I was satisfied with the report that was issued, but we're here and I'd be happy, you sat through our entire meeting tonight, so I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, after having the HR committee today, that there are problematic issues with Mr. Spencer's report that were brought up during that meeting, that the C651 forms that they're demonstrating to you now that they weren't completed and needed to be done, which were mostly 6 to 8 of them, what I was told, especially that name break that wasn't completed as well. That was not in Mr. Spencer's report, whether he knew or not, but that was done after the fact, and they went back and predated those documents and then presented them at the council as if they were current. And that, in my opinion, is an issue. It's not in the report that Mr. Spencer put out, and I brought that up today, but they're correcting that now. Speaking on behalf of that, my belief is that it was a level 3. That when I spoke to Mr. Greeno, that Mr. Greeno has been with the city for almost 10 years now. He is licensed. He's very good at what he does. He was specifically told to shut those mains down by Mr. Wagner, his supervisor, immediate supervisor, and was also told to go and put a note on the door to let the person know that the water was shut off. Mr. Wagner himself tried to get a hold of the resident. He wasn't there. He went beyond that to get a hold of his daughter or sister to let her know that there was an issue that he may have to not drink that water at that point in time. There was, from what Megan says, slippage by the valve. So if Mr. Greeno turned it off, which he says that he did, that if there was seepage going past that point in time, there's no way that there was 20 PSI. Because Mr. Greeno himself actually, when it was broken, had to have a pump. It was barely heating up. So to say that there was positive pressure coming out, it has to be a lot more than what Mrs. Moore is specifying at this point in time. When the water has come out, there was no BACT sample taken. There was nothing delivered to the plant. There was nothing delivered to Endyne. That water should not have been turned down until the BACT sample came back. And when the individual that came on to repair it the next day, because Mr. Greeno was still there, the supervisor himself put the person that was the first day on his job at that particular location and sent Mr. Greeno in a different direction. So if Mr. Greeno was there that day, we wouldn't be actually having this conversation because it was in the hands of somebody that just wasn't trained properly. And I thought it was a poor choice by management that putting somebody in that's not properly trained and not licensed, that they don't have the ability of knowing about the C651 form that was not completed properly. And it was the responsibility of the manager himself that he should have been on site that whole entire time if he's not having a licensed operator for distro on that site. When the break happened, Mr. Greeno implored to Mr. Wagner that they should fix it right then and there. He could keep the positive pressure, getting it done. He didn't want to do that and shut it down. So they backfilled it. The very next day, when they picked the backfill out, there is gravel that is put back into that area the night before. And that also has the possibility of being contaminated as well. So I know that they're presenting the positives that come out, but there are a lot of negatives that came out, and there's a lot, in my opinion, of inaccuracies that are being presented to you. And you're only getting 50% of what the story is. We felt that enough because we deal with public safety. The people in the water department that have been there, that have tenure, take a very strong responsibility, as you saw from Mr. Grolinger that has been in that field. Mr. Greeno himself, they brought it to your attention because it is in the comprehensive policy book about the code of conduct of the safety that does go out to it. And whether it was 50 residents or one still matters. In my opinion, that there was a possibility if that person did have an immune system problem that it could have been compromised. There are a lot of flaws that happened here that day that really need to be corrected, and there has to be some ownership on it, from my opinion, from management. And I thought I saw it earlier today, but it seems not to be the case, and I think that needs to be also corrected. Is there any other questions that you'd like to know from me?
I would like to know if you think that the protocol changes that are being proposed would address.
I do. The only one that I saw when I had talked to Mrs. Moore today, and I agree with her on it. I think that there should be a meter for positive pressure. That way you can gauge the very next day if you have to open it up to know that you're getting the 20 PSI. And I think that should be a factor that should be purchased as well. The color wheel that she had mentioned earlier is problematic. The better testing to have your total and free is the mechanism that she's talking about that they use at the water plant to make sure that it's all out through the city when they go out and test them. So I think that there are a lot of protocols that are coming into play, but there has to be accountability too. So I think that there are a lot of issues going on at that time, or at that point in time, with the person that is in charge that should have had more training himself to not put somebody that was there their first day on the job.
And we did respond. Sorry, go ahead.
And the form should be completely filled out that day. You shouldn't have to be going back in time and refilling those forms out. And there should be a back D sample taken, every time that you feel that that shut off has happened.
Okay. I don't know.
There isn't one for that. There wasn't one for that break.
There is not one, because ultimately that break was a level 1 break based on, we do need to redefine positive pressure, but we have never measured by a pressure gauge. We cannot always measure by a pressure gauge when they are managing emergencies and whatnot. And so that was one of the things we went into deep detail with the rural water person about what would be a good surrogate for ensuring that even if you didn't hit 20 PSI, that no contamination had occurred.
And do you believe the next day that there was 20 PSI coming out of that pipe?
I didn't say that there was 20 PSI. What I said is that there's water flowing out of the pipe. And if there's water flowing out of the pipe, that means that stuff is not getting into the pipe. And that is at least what I have been taught. So I'm not saying that 20 PSI was there, but I also disagree that it was a level 3 break. A level 3 break, there is known visible contamination or a contamination situation that leads you to call a level 3. I also affirm or would assert that I know if the manager told Mr. Greeno to shut down the pipe, a boil water situation should have been triggered at that exact moment if he truly believed that he was going to be fully depressurizing and that cascade would have happened. And so I have, as you heard me say, I need him to say that. And if Eden's not listening, if other people are not listening, to call me so that we can deal with that in that moment. When I described the situation to the state, even at that time where I thought that the line had been depressurized, given the extremely low risk of contamination, given our chlorine residual, given that we flushed afterwards, again, at least the state person that I contacted was not overtly concerned about this thing had it happened in the past. And it was more focused on continuous improvement for the future. So I took responsibility. I also told Damien and Jesse that I shouldn't have made the assumption, because a lot of times you do put managers in, you install managers and they don't know everything, but you do incorrectly in this situation rely on existing staff to keep them informed on the way that we do things and on the protocols of that particular work group. And probably because of the relationship between these two particular people, that information flow is not happening. And so ultimately, and I've told Chapin, if anybody needs to be disciplined, it's me for not taking the time to sit the new manager down. And on this particular issue, which I don't disagree is extremely important and is a matter of public health, I should have walked him through it myself, and I didn't do that. So I take full responsibility and, you know, hold myself accountable for that. And if Chapin chooses to hold me accountable in other ways, I'm happy to do that. But I have no concerns about this particular incident based on the information that we got. And I honestly, even if the line had been depressurized, given the years and years and years and how we manage breaks, and because of the factors of our system, we are protected. I am not concerned about this, and I am, you know, very bullish on looking forward, making improvements, trying to work better with staff, and in the future, as I had offered to Chapin, when these incidents come up, to immediately pull in all of the people, so I'm not, you know, doing the goose chase that I kind of went through on this process, where I was getting ribs and drabs of information because people weren't talking directly to me.
Yeah, the DEC did call Mr. Greeno and had a conversation with them, and there were gaps of information there. And he also felt that it should have been a level 3. He had mentioned that to Jesse on the phone, which they are supposed to bring to committee. And there could be a possible violation, but we don't know yet. But he did contact him and have a conversation with him about that. And the other person at DEC that talked to Mr. Greeno did believe at that point in time that it was a level 3 and it should have been.
That person didn't have the information that when they dug down, that there was water flowing out. And even when I talked to the person that I spoke with, our compliance person at DEC, that again, I shared with you what they said. And I haven't backfilled to them that at the end of the day, based on the information we now have, that there was water flowing out of the pipe.
The only one concern that I have with this, and I hopefully that Mark and you will agree with, is that you say that there was low risk. When it comes to the drinking water that is a product of the community, there should be 0 risk. In my opinion, that should be the aspect of it every single time. And knowing to the fact of saying, well, there's a possibility, but it's low risk. There should be 0 risk when you're taking in drinkable water, not only for the people that are there, the pets that you may own, even though that it was only one resident, it could have been more. And my feeling is that when it comes to that part of that the people are actually purchasing, that the water that the city that we deliver, that there should be absolutely 0 risk involved.
I think I've demonstrated my commitment to public health and the variety of decisions that I've made, often on the conservative side with regard to beach closures, with regard to the boil waters that we have issued. As I've said, I am trying to make an improvement on this. And
I believe that Meg will. Everything that I've known about her, that any of these steps that she's gonna tighten them up. It's just that from my perspective is that I don't bring things to the city council often. And if I feel that they're important enough to do it, and I see that factor, especially when it's quite based on the community, I would hope that you would never hold me against and accountable for not bringing it to your attention. I did bring it to HR's attention first. I did not bring it to city council. I let them do the due process on their investigation, what they were told me being done. And as soon as the investigation was done, I felt that I had to bring it to your attention. I would have hoped that they would have. But I ended up having to feel that the necessary needs to do so. So I think that everything that is at this will be corrected with a little bit more discussion. I think that the protocols that Chapin and Megan are putting in place are all going to be positive. I just need that the ownership, which Megan has mentioned multiple times on the possibility of disciplinary action, that I do commend her on actually putting that out. So I really believe it's been a productive day all the way around. It's a long day of meeting with the HR committee and here yourself, but I really believe that it will be worked out. It's just that it's too bad that we just had to get to this point in order to do so. So
I mean, from my perspective, I would, you know, and this is a process that you're undertaking. And at the end of that process, or where you think it's the end, I'd love for somebody to come back and give us an update on that. I don't personally think that the two
has the jurisdiction around the human resources aspects of this, the personnel aspects of it. There is a committee, and
That was discussed today.
so they can, that committee can do that. So I hear a commitment by Megan, I hear a commitment by Damien to have this constant improvement. And I think that makes coming here really important, because we all have so much to do, and adding another thing is just a pain in the neck, and that's the tendency, is to not want to do it. So but I think this is really important, and I appreciate the effort and the times that everybody has put in, and I really appreciate that we have gotten to air this, so that the pressure is on to consistently do the right thing.
Yeah, I'm also glad that there are changes that are anticipated. There's accountability. Everybody seems to be on a path toward restored relationships. It seems like it's damaged some relationships.
There's, like they mentioned, that there's a personnel factor that's going on that has kind of damaged that relationship. And that's, the process is also having to be repaired in a different way through grievance processes with the CBA. So, but that's a different element, and that's with the HRC. And there's, like Megan has and Chapin mentioned, there's a lot that I can't even discuss about that side of it. Other than there is a conflict that's going on there, and that will be up for at least the local and management to get that resolved, which I believe that we're on a good path to do that as well. It's been a long path.
Where the team's concerned, I agree. I'd love to see what ultimately comes out of this.
Yeah.
Zero risk.
Zero risk.
Yes. We all work very hard every day to deliver safe drinking water. We are managing a plant that's 40 years old that has not been capitally renovated. Before Megan and I started here, we weren't relining water mains. Quarter of our water mains across the city are beyond 100 years old. I want this public to know we work day in and day out, 12 hours a day to keep this going. And frankly, Megan and I, one of our outreaches to Damien and the crew today was communicate directly with us. If there's concern, people know me. I am not a scary person. I am here, I live in this town, I drink the water. If there's concern, I'm here and available. Megan's here and available. We've provided our cell phones, the entire team. Reach out, we're here to help. We're always together trying to improve our city, and together, working together, we will improve the city.
Yeah, it would have been fine. Like I said, there's that conflicting issue, and the person that there didn't feel that he was being heard, so he figured that he would address it through HR. Because the person that was there, like I said, directed him in a wholly different direction, and there's a personnel conflict where that individual should have been on that job site that day. And
But I was on site, and so
I was on site.
I don't know why Jesse, I would have liked for him to have said something, because when I was there, they were discussing shutting it down and leaving it. And
that was up to the Mr. Bogler. I mean,
I know, but what I'm saying,
the AWWA regulations that he knows, and he should have known better. He should have known as soon as that he had told Jesse down that it was his responsibility to either contact you, Rob Golding, Chapin, whoever it would be, to put out that notice, and he neglected to do that. And he should also be taking ownership of that as well.
in the future, I would like him to tell me directly, especially when I'm on site, if he has serious concerns about something. I would have liked to him.
I understand that. We talked about the chain of command today, and it's been broken, but that has to be reestablished, because even at that, when he's talking to them, he doesn't want to jump the steps as well by either going to Chapin and you and giving the benefit of the doubt to the man that actually is in charge at that point in time. So, like I said, that has to be corrected too, and we'll just get through that process and make sure that that's taken care of, that the chain of command is functional and not broken.
Well, thank you both for coming tonight. Does that complete your director's report?
That does.
Are there any councilor items?
No, I totally appreciate what Chapin said about his commitment and Megan's commitment to the safety, the health and safety of the people of Burlington. And I appreciate your work. I look and I've seen all of that. So that's my counselor report. I think is important for us to acknowledge.
No, I agree with that.
Well, they've done a wonderful job of the infrastructure since I've been here. I mean, the whole realignment that was out here, that was with Chapin and Miss Moore, that they did that whole entire project. It's just that the complacency factor has to be fixed on the safety side of it, so.
Okay, well, thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Our next meeting, which will be a new to committee, is scheduled for the 23rd of April. Is this room available then?
I believe so.
Is 5 o'clock a good time for you to stop? Well, at least we can talk about when we reform the committee, what a good meeting time is, maybe at that committee.
Yeah, good.
But for the month of April, we will be keeping our fourth Tuesday of the month regimen. Please for that.
And the room is booked.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I will adjourn us. This may have been the longest meeting, 3 hours and 5 minutes, but it's our last one. We won't make a habit of it. We promise staff and everybody else who hung in there with us. It's like Pike hung in with us.
Rob.
Who else?
Okay.
Okay, that's it. That's a wrap.
That's
Thanks all.
Good night, everybody.